Chapter 317. Qin Wentian soon became famous in the unmatched realm. He obtained the authority to cultivate from all 36 halls, defeated Lei Yan in a domineering manner, and ruthlessly crushed Lu Shi from the Mystic Maiden Palace. Many people started to inquire about Qin Wentian, and even sought out Chu Mang and Fan Lo, who were friends of Qin Wentian. Finally, they learned of a name, Qin Wentian. After which, there were rumors that Qin Wentian had once gone berserk in the Moon Continent and killed Hua Xiaoyun, the younger brother of the number one genius of the younger generation, Hua Taishu. Not only that, Qin Wentian was also surrounded by many experts. It was rumored that Zhang Chen, Yang Fan, and other heavens chosen on the heavenly fate rankings were all present, but Qin Wentian forcibly abducted Yang Fan's fiancée, Shu Wanyu, threatening Yang Fan in the star-seizing manner into not daring to touch him. After Shu Wanyu returned to the Moon Continent, the relationship between the star-seizing manor and the Shu clan underwent a subtle change. The star-seizing manor obviously felt that after Shu Wanyu was abducted by Qin Wentian for so many days, Qin Wentian didn't do anything to her. After all, Yang Fan's status in the star-seizing manor was extraordinary. As for why this piece of news was circulated, it was because there were geniuses from the Moon Continent who were cultivating in the unmatched realm. Hence, they had heard a little about this matter, but the details weren't very clear. But at the very least, during this short period of time, Qin Wentian had created a whirlwind in the unmatched realm. Many people even wanted to spar with Qin Wentian, as though defeating him would be a matter of great honor. Naturally, there were also some pursuers of Lu Shi who wanted to seek revenge from Qin Wentian. However, even more people were curious about Qin Wentian. It was rumored that Qin Wentian didn't have an extremely powerful background, but the things he did were simply too crazy. Killing Hua Xiaoyun, abducting Shu Wanyu, using the thunder flame, and torturing Lu Shi. If one saw him for the first time, they would never have imagined that he would be so crazy. Today, several members of the Ouyang aristocrat clan arrived at the unmatched realm. Duan Qingshan brought Ouyang Ting with him. Ever since Ouyang Ting was humiliated, her thirst for power grew stronger and stronger. She wanted to surpass Ouyang Quangsheng. Today, she wanted to barge into the unmatched realm. As for Duan Qingshan, he was a heaven chosen of the Ouyang aristocrat clan with a different surname. Naturally, he was already a member of the unmatched realm. At this moment, there were several people gathered at the entrance of the unmatched realm. Someone in the air laughed, "Brother Duan, when will we be able to drink a cup of wine together?" "It's still early." Duan Qingshan casually laughed. After some time, Ouyang Ting exited the unmatched realm. The person in charge of activating the unmatched realm lightly nodded his head. "Congratulations, you've passed the test of the unmatched realm. In the future, you can cultivate in the unmatched realm." "Thank you, senior." Ouyang Ting bowed slightly towards the silhouette in the air as a look of joy appeared on her face. After which, she clenched her fists tightly, appearing exceptionally excited. That person nodded his head and left. Without the unmatched old man appearing, Ouyang Ting barely managed to pass the test and obtain the qualifications to enter the unmatched realm. However, if she wanted to enter the 36 Dao cultivation halls, she still had to rely on her own efforts. "Ting congratulations. In the future, you will be able to cultivate together with me." Duan Qingshan smiled. Ouyang Ting nodded her head. "I will definitely surpass Ouyang Quangsheng. As for that Qin Wentian and Fan Lo, I will definitely avenge them. I believe in you." Duan Qingshan smiled as he nodded his head. However, the spectators in the air were all stunned. "Qin Wentian? Wasn't that the madman who just arrived?" "Ouyang Ting, do you have a grudge against Qin Wentian?" someone asked. "Michem?" Ouyang Ting furrowed her brows as she stared at that person. "Yes, there's a grudge between us." "Do you know him?" "Nope." That person shook his head as he laughed. The countenances of the spectators flickered. Duan Qingshan coldly asked, "How do you guys know Qin Wentian?" "Brother Duan, right now in the unmatched realm, there aren't many people who don't know of Qin Wentian." Someone laughed, causing Duan Qingshan to glance at the person who spoke. Ouyang Guangsheng brought Qin Wendian and 2 of his friends to the unmatched realm. Not only that, the 3 of them passed the test, and his 2 friends were accepted as disciples by the Arrow Emperor and Xiao Long respectively. That person continued. How can that be? What about Qin Wendian? Ouyang Ting's countenance stiffened. She had heard many stories about the unmatched realm from Duan Qingshan. Qin Wendian wasn't accepted as a disciple by anyone, but he was able to enter the 36 Dao cultivation halls. The 36 Dao cultivation halls are open to him. That person's words caused the countenances of Ouyang Ting and Duan Qingshan to freeze. Not only that, Qin Wendian even beat up Lei Yan and Lu Shi, causing them to be in a miserable state, the other party added. How can this be? Ouyang Ting no longer felt the slightest bit of excitement. Her countenance was as ugly as it could be. The fellow she hated so much, was actually so much more outstanding than her. She had no way to accept such a disparity. Not long ago, she was still feeling immensely pleased with herself for passing the test of the unmatched realm. But now, she felt as though she had fallen into the abyss. The disparity was too great. Based on her background, even if she was beaten up by Qin Wendian, she would only feel anger and hatred. She still looked down on Qin Wendian. But now, this piece of news was extremely hard to accept. Ting since he came to the unmatched realm, wouldn't things be even more interesting? Duan Qingshan held onto Ouyang Ting's hands, as though he was consoling her. Ouyang Ting nodded her head, her heart was still filled with anxiety. When she was in the Ouyang aristocrat clan, she could act high and mighty in front of those who wanted to become a part of the Ouyang aristocrat clan. But in the unmatched realm, where geniuses were as numerous as the clouds, there were many whose talents were not inferior to hers. She didn't feel the slightest bit of arrogance. But now, she discovered that Qin Wendian's name had already spread far and wide. How could she not feel upset? At this moment, Qin Wendian was currently on a precipice. After inscribing divine inscriptions, he started to study the mountain rampart in front of him. On the mountain rampart, there were many diagrams inscribed, resembling demonic diagrams that contained an intent. As Qin Wendian studied it seriously, the intent seemed as though it wanted to rush out from the mountain rampart, as numerous diagrams appeared. Back then, that senior was a demonic beast. The innate technique he cultivated was extremely powerful, but it was based on demonic beasts. You might not be suitable to cultivate it. Ouyang Guangsheng stood beside Qin Wendian, as he pointed to the front. Just look at that diagram, his arms resembled those of a primordial ape. When he punched out, the mountains and rivers trembled, containing a terrifying might. But it's too difficult for us to achieve. To me, it's not difficult at all. Qin Wendian laughed. After which, he stretched out his arms. This time around, he didn't use demonic qi to envelop his arms. Instead, his arms began to transform, becoming thicker and more muscular, with terrifying scales covering them. Strength, not inferior to demonic beasts. Qin Wendian punched out, shattering a gigantic boulder beside the precipice as demonic qi permeated the air. This. Ouyang Guangsheng was speechless. I wonder how you managed to cultivate the mandate of demonic energy to such a level. With just your physique alone, you could insta-kill cultivators at the 5th level of Yuanfu. No wonder your strength was so terrifying. The 81 demonic innate techniques here are very suitable for me. Qin Wendian laughed. I'll have to spend some time to comprehend them. Qin Wendian had already cultivated the Fiend transformation art to the 2nd level, the Fiend Advent realm. He could transform his body parts into that of a demonic beast, forming the body of a demonic venerable. Not only that, he was extremely proficient in using it. One of the bloodlines that flowed through his veins was that of an extremely powerful demonic bloodline. In addition to his demon sovereign astral soul, which allowed him to absorb astral energy from the demon sovereign constellations, he was extremely suited to cultivating the mandate of demonic beasts. Now that he had the physique of a demonic beast, he believed that the demonic arts that appeared on the precipice would be extremely suitable for him to cultivate. Amicham, you only have a year's time. You have to make the most of it and increase your strength. Ouyang Quangsheng nodded. It's not so easy to obtain the top 3 positions in the Heavenly Fate rankings. The opponents you will face will all be incomparably strong. I understand. This unmatched realm is an extremely wondrous place. I have to thank you for your help. Qin Wendian politely replied. You're being polite to me? Ouyang Quangsheng glared at Qin Wendian, causing the two of them to break out into laughter. At this moment, a few silhouettes appeared not far away from them. They floated above the surface of the sea as they stared at Qin Wendian. So you're hiding here? Ouyang Quangsheng frowned when he saw them. Out of the 3 of you, 2 are at the 7th level of Yuanfu while the other is at the 8th level. Are you here to spar with Qin Wendian? Hee, spar. You overestimate him too much. I'm only here to settle some debts with him. The 3 of them laughed as they walked towards the edge of the precipice, exuding a powerful aura. How annoying. Qin Wendian felt depressed in his heart. If you want to fight, hurry up. The 3 of them froze. One of them had a cold smile on his face as he stared disdainfully at Qin Wendian. An intense glow enveloped him as he calmly stated, Now, follow me to Lu Shi's place. Kneel before her and apologize. Kowtow 10 times and I won't pursue this matter any further. This person was none other than an expert at the 8th level of Yuanfu. From afar, the spectators sighed in admiration when they saw this scene. Qin Wendian is in trouble. Zai Mu's combat prowess is extremely powerful. His combat prowess is definitely at the 9th level of Yuanfu. This time around, Qin Wendian has given him a good opportunity to pursue Lu Shi. The 3 of you, come at me together. Qin Wendian indifferently spoke, his words causing Zai Mu's expression to stiffen. They knew Qin Wendian was arrogant, but they didn't expect him to be this arrogant. Courting death. Zai Mu and the other 2 stepped out, instantly arriving at Qin Wendian's side. Zai Mu stabbed out with his finger as a resplendent beam of sword light slashed out, exuding a terrifying might. However, at the instant he descended, Qin Wendian stomped his foot on the ground as a towering sword chi swept through the air. Piercing sounds rang out as the beam of sword light was actually engulfed by it. Qin Wendian stabbed out with his finger as the surrounding area transformed into countless beams of sword light that gushed forth in rage. Zai Mu's countenance drastically changed, only to see the sword light enveloping them within. Qin Wendian frenziedly stabbed out with his palms, causing the 2 of them to scream in agony. Do you want to die? Qin Wendian stared at Zai Mu as a terrifying sword might gushed forth. Zai Mu's countenance turned as white as paper. How could there be such terrifying divine inscriptions here? Puchi. Numerous beams of sword light pierced through his arms, causing blood to spurt out. Zai Mu and the other 2 screamed in agony. However, Qin Wendian didn't relent. His sword might continued gushing forth, penetrating through their arms as well as their chests. Qin Wendian's silhouette flickered as he dashed forwards, punching out at them one after another. After which, the spectators from afar saw Qin Wendian directly blasting the bodies of Zai Mu and the other 2 off the cliff. Splashing sounds rang out as the waves of the sea washed over them. If anyone else dares to come, they will have the same ending. Qin Wendian's voice was ice cold as he stared into the distance. Not long after, the bodies of Zai Mu and the other 2 burst out from the sea. Their arms hung limply by their sides, their countenances were as pale as paper, and their bodies were drenched in sweat. They angrily glared at Qin Wendian before turning and departing. The spectators from afar all felt their hearts pounding madly, yet Qin Wendian quietly turned and smiled bitterly at the dumbfounded Ouyang Quangsheng and Ouyang Xiaolu. Kneel down and kowtow 10 times. If I don't be more ruthless to these people, I don't know how many arrogant fellows would come here to make me kowtow. After which, Qin Wendian sat cross-legged, preparing to cultivate. Chapter 318. After Zaimu, no one else dared to disturb Qin Wentian's cultivation. On the precipice, the mountains and the sea were connected. The sound of waves crashing against the mountain walls rang out unceasingly. That silhouette sat cross-legged, and after a period of time, he would stand up and soar above the sea surface, like a great rock soaring through the heavens and earth, or like a flood dragon stirring up the winds and clouds. From afar, there were people who saw Qin Wentian cultivating, and their hearts were filled with shock. Very quickly, rumors circulated that Qin Wentian was a half-beastman, and was the same as Shiki, possessing a powerful demonic bloodline. He was extremely suitable to cultivate the innate abilities of demonic beasts, and was able to comprehend the innate techniques left behind by the seniors of the demonic world. The rumors grew more and more exaggerated, and many people gradually believed that Qin Wentian was a half-beastman. In any case, there were too many rumors regarding Qin Wentian in the unmatched realm. Some said he was a fourth-ranked grandmaster, some said he was a half-beastman, and there were even rumors that he was a hidden descendant of the Ouyang aristocrat clan. Or perhaps, he was the illegitimate son of an important figure of the Ouyang aristocrat clan. Ouyang Guangsheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he heard this. In the unmatched realm, in a pavilion, a young man and a young woman sat facing each other. Both of them were extremely outstanding. The young man's bearing was extraordinary, and he didn't seem to have any aura at all. However, every single move he made seemed to contain a profound concept. It was as if every single move he made contained a profound rhythm that harmonized with the heavens and the earth. The young woman was extremely beautiful, even more so compared to Lu Shi, who was defeated by Qin Wentian. Lu Shi had many suitors, but this young woman had very few pursuers. Because she already had a lover, and her lover was an extremely famous character in the entire unmatched realm. Situ Pa, a disciple of the Sword Extinction sect, was a heaven's chosen of the Azure continent. Only those who could step into the top 36 of the heavenly fate rankings had the qualifications to become a heaven's chosen of the 9 continents. Situ Po was destined to step into the top 36 of the heavenly fate rankings. It was rumored that a year from now, he would be heading to the ancient kingdom of Grand Xia. At that time, there was no doubt that he would be ranked within the heavenly fate rankings. In fact, if the heavenly fate rankings were to be rearranged now, with his current strength, he would definitely be able to obtain a spot within the heavenly fate rankings. He was Situ Pa. Before Qin Wentian, there were already 3 people who had the right to cultivate the 36 mountains. Situ Po was one of them. Currently, Situ Pa had a cultivation base at the 8th level of Yuanfu. His combat prowess could easily insta-kill an ordinary cultivator at the 9th level of Yuanfu, and even defeat a demon-level Yuanfu genius. As for how strong he was exactly, no one knew. Most probably, they would only find out in a year's time. But there was no need to doubt his strength. Once upon a time, he was the same as Qin Wentian, causing quite a commotion in the unmatched realm, defeating many challengers. Up till today, there were already very few people who dared to challenge him. As for the beautiful maiden, her name was Yu Bingying, and she was from the Azure Emperor Palace, one of the transcendent powers of the Azure continent. Not long ago, she had broken through to the 7th level of Yuanfu, and her talent could also be considered outstanding. I heard that the person named Qin Wentian is even more famous than you. Yu Bingying's smile was akin to a blossoming flower, as she spoke to Situ Pa. Situ Pa laughed lightly. He didn't exude any arrogance, nor did he exude any arrogance. Upon hearing this name that he had been so familiar with recently, there wasn't much of a ripple in his heart. To others, they might want to challenge Qin Wentian to see how strong he was, but Situ Pa didn't have such thoughts. After all, he was the same type of person as Qin Wentian, having the right to cultivate the 36 mountains. For such a person, his confidence was ingrained deep in his bones, just like Qin Wentian. Arrogance flowed in his veins, and his arrogance towered up to the heavens, yet on the surface, he looked extremely ordinary. He knew that Qin Wentian's talent was extremely high. Since he was able to obtain the right to cultivate the 36 mountains, how could his talent not be high? He must have passed the final checkpoint. But so what? After all, Qin Wentian's cultivation base was only at the 5th level of Yuanfu, they weren't on the same level at all. Hence, he only felt a trace of curiosity towards Qin Wentian. That fellow is truly ruthless. No matter what, She is still a delicate beauty, yet he actually dared to attack her until she was bedridden for several days. I wonder how many men have died of heartache because of this. Do you feel the same way? Yu Bingying smiled. As long as she doesn't provoke you, I won't feel anything. Situpa faintly replied, his words causing a sweet smile to appear on Yu Bingying's face. Oh yeah, I heard that your Azure Emperor Palace isn't very peaceful recently. What's going on? Did the Azure faction start to stir up trouble again? Situpa asked in bewilderment. There are traces of the D clan. But after so many years, it's impossible for them to rise from the ashes again. Yu Bingying's beautiful eyes flashed with a cold smile. Our Azure Emperor Palace has been investigating the inheritances left behind by the Azure Emperor all these years, as well as those hidden descendants of the Azure Emperor. We've searched through many places, even to the remote empires, yet there's no news at all. Now that they've appeared, it might be a good thing for them. You better be careful. Situpa spoke to Yu Bingying. Although this matter doesn't implicate you temporarily, there's no harm in being careful. What's there to be afraid of? Don't I have you to protect me? I'm really anticipating the day when you grow up. At that time, the Azure Emperor Palace will support you to control the Sword Extinction Sect, and after you become the leader of the Sword Extinction Sect, we will be able to suppress the Azure Emperor Palace. It would be perfect if the two transcendent powers could be united under one banner. Yu Bingying laughed, she didn't mind even if her words were heard by those from the Sword Extinction Sect. The Sword Extinction Sect was originally a power of a sect. The heavens chosen of the younger generations would fight for the leadership of the Sword Extinction Sect, eliminating the other geniuses one step at a time. There will definitely be a day like that. Situpa laughed. At this moment, the sound of footsteps drifted over from afar. It was none other than the heavens chosen candidate of the Sword Extinction Sect, Lin Haotian. A complicated expression could be seen in his eyes as he stared at Situpa. He was already very outstanding, but because of Situpa, he was suppressed to the point where he couldn't even lift his head. Lin Haotian, I heard that you wanted to witness Qin Wentian's strength. How is it going? Yu Bingying turned her gaze over as she smiled at Lin Haotian. He's currently cultivating. Lin Haotian replied. Zai Mu's matter should be enough to make you guys not dare to antagonize him again. Yu Bingying laughed. Lin Haotian, help me with something. Arrange an appointment with Qin Wentian. I'm really curious, what's the difference between him and Situpa? After speaking, Yu Bingying smiled as she glanced at Situpa, causing him to shake his head with a smile. This lass must have noticed that Qin Wentian was the same as him, possessing the authority to cultivate in all 36 halls. Hence, she wanted to broaden her horizons. Lin Haotian froze for a moment before shifting his gaze onto Situpa. Situ politely nodded his head as Lin Haotian replied, okay. After which, he turned and departed the area. Very quickly, the Sword Extinction Sect released the news that Yu Bingying wanted to meet with Qin Wentian to test his strength. This news caused the entire unmatched realm to be in an uproar. Yu Bingying's cultivation base had already broken through to the 7th level of Yuanfu. Qin Wentian shouldn't be able to contend against her. Not only that, everyone knew very well who would be behind Yu Bingying. Qin Wentian was completely oblivious to all the rumors going on in the outside world. In the blink of an eye, he had already been cultivating for over a month. Waves crashed against the cliffs, yet Qin Wentian was still immersed in his cultivation. His body was dripping wet, exuding a demonic aura. A raging wind gushed forth from his body as the demonic qi around him grew stronger and stronger. At this moment, Qin Wentian was sitting cross-legged, immersed in his dreamscape. In his dreamscape, the 81 stances of the demonic arts were extremely terrifying. The Yuanfu within his body was roaring, growing larger and larger as it expanded at a frenzied pace. As the first Yuanfu transformed, the other two Yuanfu also began to seethe with energy. Within Qin Wentian's body, rumbling sounds could be heard. Qin Wentian. Lin Haotian and a few others stood on top of a gigantic boulder far away. However, Qin Wentian, who was in the midst of his cultivation, was on the verge of breaking through. Hence, he didn't even bother to listen to their voices. This fellow is indeed as the rumors said. If it wasn't for the fact that he had inscribed a divine inscription, we would have directly rushed over and captured him. Lin Haotian nodded his head, only to see a snowy puppy glaring at him from the edge of the cliff. A cold smile appeared on Lin Haotian's face, even a beast dared to glare at him in such a manner. Qin Wentian, wake up! Lin Haotian roared. A terrifying will of the mandate of swords gushed forth, directly piercing into Qin Wentian's sea of consciousness, causing Qin Wentian to feel an unbearable sense of discomfort. Qin Wentian groaned in agony. Abruptly, his eyes flickered with an intense cold light as he stood up and turned his gaze towards Lin Haotian. His eyes were as cold as ice, akin to a sharp sword that was unsheathed, piercing towards Lin Haotian. Humph! Upon seeing this, Lin Haotian coldly laughed. Although Qin Wentian's talent had already been acknowledged by the unmatched realm, he actually dared to act so arrogantly in front of Lin Haotian. Qin Wentian, there's someone who wishes to see you. Lin Haotian emotionlessly stated. Qin Wentian fell silent for a moment before his lips trembled. After which, he coldly spat out, "Scram as far away as you can." Lin Haotian's gaze froze as the sword intent radiating from him intensified. He coldly laughed, "You won't be able to hide from someone who wishes to see you. It's better for you to come with me. You can be so arrogant even when you're a dog. I told you to scram." Qin Wentian's tone was ice cold. The greatest taboo for cultivators was to be interrupted, let alone when he was on the verge of breaking through. At this moment, he only wanted to regain the state he was in earlier, and break through to the 6th level of Yuanfu in the shortest time possible. As for the debt with Lin Haotian, he would settle it after he broke through. You're so arrogant that you don't even know who you are after defeating a few people. In the unmatched realm, you still don't have the qualifications to be arrogant. Lin Haotian coldly stated, his killing intent gushing forth. Qin Wentian turned and sat down cross-legged, directly ignoring Lin Haotian. Even if he continued to talk to Lin Haotian now, it would be useless. Not only that, it would be troublesome for him to deal with those people. You'd better never leave the place where the divine inscription was carved. Seeing that Qin Wentian was ignoring him, Lin Haotian also left the area, leaving behind a few words of threat. Chapter 319. After Qin Wentian was interrupted, he once again entered a meditative state, wanting to find that wondrous state he was in. However, it wasn't easy for him to enter that state again. He could only repeat the demonic art over and over again until his body was permeated with demonic qi, causing his Yuanfu to tremble violently. Only then did he gradually find that wondrous state. At this moment, his body was like that of a demon. Demonic qi circulated around his body, and the astral energy in his Yuanfu grew even more violent. Gradually, the astral energy in his 3 Yuanfu pools started to seethe. His aura gradually rose, becoming stronger and stronger. On the precipice of the mountain, a man and a snowy puppy sat quietly. Only the sound of the crashing waves could be heard, unceasingly crashing against the mountain walls. From afar, no one was paying attention to Qin Wentian anymore. After all, the people in the unmatched realm were all geniuses. They had to cultivate themselves, and it was impossible for them to keep watching Qin Wentian. However, there were already rumors circulating in the outside world that Qin Wentian would be defeated this time around. What sort of character was Yu Bingying? Leaving aside her own status in the Azure Emperor Palace, as well as her own talent, her companion, Situ Pe, was extremely famous in the unmatched realm. Not only that, he had already been here for over a year, and his cultivation base was already at the 8th level of Yuanfu. Qin Wentian, who was at the 5th level of Yuanfu, couldn't be compared to him. The disparity between them was simply too great. However, Qin Wentian had no idea about all of this. A few days later, when Qin Wentian opened his eyes, a faint smile could be seen on his face. At this moment, his demonic qi was retracted, and his aura was calm, just like an ordinary person. Only his long hair and robes were disheveled by the sea breeze. Swish! Little rascal instantly leapt into Qin Wentian's embrace, causing Qin Wentian to smile as he rubbed its head. Come on, let's go take a bath. After speaking, Qin Wentian stepped out, hugging little rascal as he leapt into the sea. The unmatched realm's mountain range was extremely vast. There were 36 Dao cultivation mountains, and on top of them, there were cultivation caves and ancient halls. Every mountain was guarded by an expert known as the Unmatched Elders. At this time, halfway up a cultivation mountain, a young man slowly walked up. A snowy puppy ran behind him, looking extremely adorable. There were many cave dwellings in the mountains, all of which were opened up by the people who cultivated here. As long as one had the right to cultivate in a Dao cultivation mountain, they could open up their own cave dwelling in the mountain. At the beginning of every month, Old Man Peerless would discuss his understanding of martial arts in the Dao cultivation hall at the top of the mountain. Everyone could ask questions and exchange views. If there was someone with outstanding talent, Old Man Peerless would personally guide them or even take them as his disciples. Qin Wentian. A voice drifted over. Qin Wentian turned his gaze over, only to see a beautiful woman standing outside the cave dwelling. Her beautiful eyes shone with a brilliant light, and when she saw Qin Wentian looking at her, an awkward expression appeared on her face. Earlier, she had called out to him unintentionally. Qin Wentian nodded at her, revealing a gentle smile. Instantly, the beautiful eyes of the woman froze. Seeing the smile on his handsome face, she was stunned. This fellow was truly good-looking when he smiled, it was hard to imagine that he would be so violent. There's a cave dwelling beside me, it was left behind by a predecessor. Right now, there's no one inside, do you want it? The woman involuntarily called out when she saw Qin Wentian turning his gaze away. Qin Wentian stared at the woman in astonishment, causing her to feel somewhat embarrassed. However, she only saw Qin Wentian lightly nodding his head as he walked towards a cave dwelling not far away from the woman. Indeed, this cave was cleaned up and was very well developed. There was a piece of flat ground floating in the air outside, one could meditate and cultivate here. There was an ancient mountain peak beside it, as well as a waterfall. The environment wasn't bad at all. How do you know me? Qin Wentian smiled as he stared at the woman beside him. Back then when you fought against Lu Shi, I saw you before. That woman smiled as she replied, my name is Kanglin. Right now, there's someone looking for you. How relaxed, you actually came here. Kanglin, who is looking for me? Qin Wentian asked. Lin Haotian and the others. Lin Haotian? Qin Wentian didn't know. Lin Haotian is a heavens chosen from the Sword Extinction sect, with a cultivation base at the 7th level of Yuanfu. I heard that you've met him before and even told him to scram. Naturally, the person looking for you isn't him, but the person behind him. Yu Bingying heard of your reputation and wanted to meet you. Maybe she wants to see how you compare to Situ Pa. Kanglin laughed as he continued, however, I'm afraid you won't know the person I'm talking about. Yu Bingying is from the Azure Emperor Palace, with a cultivation base at the 7th level of Yuanfu. She can be considered one of the most beautiful women in the entire Unmatched Realm. Not only that, she's also Situ Po's girlfriend. Situ Pa is the same as you, he has the authority to cultivate in all 36 halls. However, with a cultivation base at the 8th level of Yuanfu, he can easily defeat opponents at the 9th level of Yuanfu. Not interested. Qin Wentian muttered to himself for a moment before smiling. Yu Bingying, someone from the Azure Emperor Palace. Had he finally come into contact with someone from the Azure Emperor Palace? Her surname was Yu. It seemed like the current Azure Emperor Palace was in the hands of someone with the surname Yu. Then, are you interested in me? A silhouette descended from the skies, instantly landing beside Qin Wentian. This caused Qin Wentian's heart to skip a beat as he stared at the silhouette in front of him. He hadn't even sensed it at all. What an incredible speed! This person had a tall stature and a dignified countenance. He didn't look old at all, only middle-aged. Qin Wentian pays his respects to senior. Qin Wentian bowed slightly, causing the middle-aged man to laugh. Hee, I've always been interested in you. I've long wanted to meet you. Come with me. Qin Wentian rolled his eyes. How direct, wasn't she? Why? Are you not willing? That person glared at Qin Wentian. I don't dare to, I'll naturally obey senior's orders. Qin Wentian shook his head. That's right. That person stepped out in the air as Qin Wentian followed after him. His actions caused Kanglin to stand there in a daze, shaking her head with a bitter smile on her face as she stared at the two silhouettes disappearing. The barbarian king personally appeared. What else could she do other than smile bitterly? Although Qin Wentian was amiable and approachable, the disparity between them was too great. It wouldn't be easy for them to cross paths. The middle-aged man brought Qin Wentian to the peak of the mountain. The atmosphere here was exceptionally cool and refreshing. Qin Wentian noticed the middle-aged man staring at him as he smiled. Little brat, I've seen your trial. Your strength is very high, how did you do it? Junior's comprehension of the mandate of force has already reached the transformation boundary, allowing me to increase my strength by 8 times. Qin Wentian replied. Don't lie to me. With a cultivation base at the 5th level of Yuanfu, an 8 times increase in strength is far from enough. The barbarian king had a smile that was not a smile on his face as he stared at Qin Wentian. I'm also proficient in demonic energy, and have cultivated demon-type cultivation arts. My physique is extremely strong, and my strength is naturally high as well. If I increase my attack power by 8 times, I would be able to reach that level. Qin Wentian stretched out his hands as demonic qi permeated the air. The barbarian king nodded his head. I've indeed seen the demonic qi you exuded during the trial. Strange, how can a human be able to cultivate a demonic body? What cultivation art do you cultivate? I'm just casually asking, you don't have to answer. The barbarian king waved his hands when he saw that Qin Wentian was in a difficult position. There were some people who cultivated extremely powerful cultivation arts, and this was Wu Xiu's secret. It was impolite of him to inquire about cultivation arts. The barbarian king naturally understood this. He wouldn't force Qin Wentian to answer just because he was curious. Use your full strength to attack me, let me feel it. The barbarian king stood there as he spoke to Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian lightly nodded his head. After which, he gathered his strength and took a step forwards, releasing the will of 2 mandates. The blood in his body surged as he blasted out with explosive force, slamming into the chest of the barbarian king. The barbarian king stood there, unmoving. The force of the attack slammed into his robes, instantly tearing them apart, revealing his naked upper body. Who? The barbarian king spat out a mouthful of turbid air as he stared at Qin Wentian. Good brat, you're already at the 6th level of Yuanfu, and the will of 2 mandates at the transformation realm. How powerful! Even someone at the 7th level of Yuanfu wouldn't be able to withstand such an attack. Qin Wentian laughed awkwardly as he stared at the half-naked barbarian king. However, the barbarian king didn't seem to mind. AI, it's such a pity that you didn't become my disciple. Such a good seedling. The barbarian king sighed in a depressed manner. His personality had always been straightforward, and he wouldn't mince his words in front of the juniors. The one who imparts knowledge is the teacher. Qin Wentian smiled at the barbarian king, causing the barbarian king to be stunned. After which, he glared at Qin Wentian as he laughed. Good brat, I didn't even say I wanted to teach you. Hee. Qin Wentian laughed awkwardly, yet his eyes were exceptionally bright when he looked at the barbarian king. Staring at the shameless look in Qin Wentian's eyes, the barbarian king continued, Okay, your strength is already very high. I will teach you some offensive techniques that will increase your strength by a few notches. In that case, you should be able to insta-kill someone at the 7th level of UN Fu just by relying on your strength alone. Many thanks, Senior. Qin Wentian bowed. How could he not grab hold of such a good opportunity? Have you seen any powerful sword cultivators before? The barbarian king asked. Naturally, not as powerful as Senior. Qin Wentian replied. The attacks of sword cultivators are as smooth as flowing water. Powerful sword techniques contain the essence of the sword within, and at the instant they strike, it's as though the sword itself is the entire world. The stronger the sword rhythm, the more terrifying the might of the attack. The barbarian king explained. An expression of contemplation appeared on Qin Wentian's face. A complete set of sword techniques had to be smooth and fluid. If one wanted the sword technique to be perfect, not a single mistake could be made. Naturally, the essence of the sword rhythm had to be extremely powerful. Actually, this is only the case for sword techniques. Isn't it the same for saber techniques? What's the difference between spear techniques and saber techniques? In fact, any type of attack is the same. The barbarian king continued, think about it, when two people have the same level of strength, why would the attacks of some seem ordinary, while the attacks of others would be like a ferocious tiger descending the mountain, possessing boundless might? Other than the innate techniques themselves, there's also the essence of the sword. The barbarian king casually punched out, causing the heavens and earth to rumble. However, the barbarian king's feet spun as he punched out once more. A thunderous boom rang out as his entire person exuded a violent aura, causing the might of his attack to be even stronger. For the two attacks, I used the same amount of strength, but you've already seen the might of my attack. Let's see it a third time. The barbarian king grew serious. He casually stood there, yet he was like a towering mountain that required one to look up at him. His body trembled slightly as the muscles of his entire body moved. His feet spun slightly as a terrifying might appeared in the surroundings. As the barbarian king punched out, a towering might blasted out together with him, causing the heavens and earth to tremble violently. It's the same strike, but your body is in harmony. You've integrated yourself into this world, as if you've become one with nature. You're everything in this world, and you've become one with it. Your body has become incomparably coordinated, and you've gathered all your strength into your arms. When you punch out, it's a rhythm, and at the same time, it's a kind of momentum. The barbarian king stared at Qin Wentian as he laughed, little brat, it's very difficult to comprehend, right? Do you understand? Understood. Qin Wentian nodded his head. His heart was filled with the fire of his heart, and when his heart was focused, it was as if he was one with the heavens and earth. It wasn't hard to comprehend the barbarian king's words. Understood. Don't talk big. Try it for 2 to 3 months and you might be able to completely control it. Next, you can continue to try it here, let me see how long you need. The barbarian king laughed uproariously. Although it seemed simple, it wasn't so easy to completely comprehend and control it. After fully comprehending it, the power behind each of Qin Wentian's attacks would increase by several folds, and each of his strikes would be the same. Chapter 320. Qin Wentian stood on the ground, drawing in a deep breath. His heart was as tranquil as still water, as he entered into a state of forgetfulness. Abruptly, his body trembled. In that instant, his body became incomparably harmonious. Astral energy gushed forth from his body, flowing towards his arms. The demonic chi he exuded towered up to the heavens, as his entire body swayed with a unique rhythm. Qin Wentian's entire being transformed into a howling demonic beast, stirring up the winds and clouds of the heavens and earth. Peng! As he punched out, the space beneath Qin Wentian's feet trembled violently. Cracks appeared on the ground beneath his feet, as though he was a ferocious beast. The barbarian king was startled. This brat's comprehension ability was so high. Not enough, your strength isn't harmonized to perfection yet. If not, your strength wouldn't have leaked to the ground beneath your feet. The barbarian king continued, not only that, your strength is too weak, you don't even have the power of a grand mandate. The strength you unleashed is merely the limit of your physique, yet you didn't borrow the power of the external mandate. How can you be called a genius? Oh. Qin Wentian's lips twitched. After which, he tried again, punching out punch after punch, gradually entering into a wondrous state. The candlelight in his heart quietly burned, as though he was the only one left in this world. When he moved, the entire world seemed to move with him. Seeing how each of Qin Wentian's punches were progressing, the barbarian king's eyes widened in disbelief. Damn, was this really a little brat at the 6th level of Yuanfu? A day later, Qin Wentian's strength harmonization had already reached perfection. As he unleashed an explosive strike, the power of the heavens and earth seemed to move with him, akin to the roar of a dragon, sweeping through the heavens and earth. This feeling caused Qin Wentian to be mesmerized. It was as though every single strand of energy in his body was being utilized to its fullest potential, without the slightest bit of wastage. He even borrowed the power of the external mandate. Done. The barbarian king's voice drifted out. Qin Wentian halted, turning to the barbarian king with a silly smile on his face. Senior, have you improved? Well, it's just as so. The barbarian king nodded. Staring at the smile that was not a smile on Qin Wentian's face, his silhouette flickered as he walked over and directly rapped on Qin Wentian's head, causing Qin Wentian to perspire in shame as he stared at the barbarian king in a depressed manner. No matter what, you are an esteemed senior, how can you bully others like this? What are you looking at? If you don't like it, then come fight me. The barbarian king placed his hands on his hips and glared at Qin Wentian, causing Qin Wentian to completely lose his temper. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry, this was too damn depressing. You've only comprehended this little thing and you're already acting so smug in front of me? With your measly strength, do you even know what a mandate is? Have you come into contact with the true meaning of martial path? The barbarian king spoke in a lecturing tone as he stared at Qin Wentian. Your mandate of force has only comprehended the first level of insight, which is also the foundation of the mandate of force. Right now, you're only at the transformation boundary, and only after that would you be able to reach the perfection boundary. Work harder in the future, and if you can comprehend the second level of insight when you're at the 8th or 9th level of Yuanfu, you'll be invincible in the Yuanfu realm. The second level of insight is so strong? Qin Wentian curiously asked. Of course, the first level of insight is the foundation of the mandate of force. Comprehending the second level of insight is already the foundation of the first level. Of course it's strong. The barbarian king continued to explain to Qin Wentian, don't underestimate the mandate of force because it's one of the more common mandates. The simpler it is, the more extraordinary it is. In my opinion, the mandate of force is the strongest. Think about it, your first level of insight is at the perfection boundary and you've already comprehended 16 times your strength. What kind of concept is that? Who in the same realm as you would be able to compete with you in terms of strength? You'd be able to destroy your opponent with a single punch. You might not be able to do so. Qin Wentian weakly replied. Although the barbarian king's words were logical, it was obvious that he was biased. Every mandate of force was extremely powerful. Just take the mandate of arrows for example. The first level of insight, insta-kill, if it reached the perfection boundary, its speed would be 16 times faster. How powerful would its attack be? Not only that, you wouldn't even be able to dodge it. Any mandate that reached the perfection boundary would be extremely terrifying. That's because you're weak. No matter how slow I am, I'd still be able to destroy you. The barbarian king spoke as he walked towards Qin Wentian. His speed was extremely slow, causing Qin Wentian to freeze as he retreated. However, he discovered that his body seemed to be bound by a boundless force, causing him to be unable to move an inch. His arms, his legs, he couldn't even lift them. The strength of the barbarian king was too terrifying. He was much stronger compared to those heavenly dipper sovereigns he had met before. This is... Qin Wentian's forehead was filled with perspiration. This is the second-level mandate of force that I've comprehended. Tell me, if I wanted to kill you, wouldn't it be as easy as squashing an ant? The barbarian king didn't hold back as he continued to attack Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian's heart trembled. Luckily, the Heavenly Dipper sovereigns he had faced before weren't that strong. If his opponent's mandate was stronger, he wouldn't even be able to escape. Using a second-level mandate of force to suppress you, before slowly walking towards you and crushing you with a single punch. For stellar martial cultivators, other than one's cultivation level, the comprehension of one's mandate is also extremely important. After that, innate techniques are important. In the future, you have to remember that when you cultivate, you have to comprehend more and comprehend more. Try to comprehend a second-level mandate of force as soon as possible. Unless you meet someone similar to you, who in the Yuanfu realm would be your opponent. As the barbarian king spoke, he noticed a look of contemplation on Qin Wentian's face. Forget it, your comprehension abilities are too low. There's nothing much to teach you. Think about it carefully. As the sound of his voice faded, the barbarian king stepped out, vanishing from sight. Qin Wentian's countenance stiffened as he stared in the direction where the barbarian king disappeared. After which, he bowed slightly to him. With the guidance of a great master, he would be able to travel 1,000 miles in a single day. If he were to cultivate by himself, he didn't know how long it would take. No wonder so many people wanted to come to the unmatched realm. There were 36 mountains here, and each of the elders had their own specialties. How could this not attract geniuses? After resting here for a day, Qin Wentian departed, heading towards the other Dao cultivation mountains to cultivate. Because each and every expert had their own specialties, Qin Wentian could only use the insights of the elders as a reference. While they were lecturing, Qin Wentian quietly listened by the side. For the most part, he spent most of his time cultivating with an elder who was proficient in the Tao of Dreams, as well as an elder who was proficient in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions. These two elders also provided guidance to Qin Wentian, allowing Qin Wentian to improve by leaps and bounds in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions. As for the Tao of Divine Inscriptions, he used the gold element scroll as a reference, comprehending the teachings of the elders. Such a method of cultivation caused Qin Wentian to feel extremely satisfied. In the past, he wasn't willing to enter closed-door seclusion for too long. After all, if he secluded himself, there would be a limit to what he could comprehend. He needed to broaden his horizons, or perhaps he needed to comprehend in the midst of battle. Only then would he be able to continuously improve. If you cultivated alone in the depths of the mountains, maybe after 10 or 20 years, you would still be at the same level as before, with no changes at all. If not, wouldn't it be better for those with high talent to hide away and cultivate for tens of years? That would be the epitome of stupidity. But in the unmatched realm, Qin Wentian had a feeling that even if he cultivated here for a few years, he wouldn't encounter any bottlenecks. In the blink of an eye, 2 months passed. Qin Wentian had already been in the unmatched realm for over 3 months. Today, on the Dao Cultivation Mountain where the Arrow Emperor resided, the Arrow Emperor, Fan Lu, and Chu Mang were present. Although the Arrow Emperor only accepted Fan Lu as his disciple, he also allowed Chu Mang to come to the Dao Cultivation Mountain. Because Chu Mang was also proficient in the Dao of Archery, he would often look for Fan Lu to seek guidance from the Arrow Emperor. Alright, take a break. At this moment, after Chu Mang and Fan Lu finished another round of practice, the Arrow Emperor waved them off. Fan Lu and Chu Mang walked towards Qin Wentian as smiles appeared on their faces. How do you feel these few months? Fan Lu asked Qin Wentian. Not bad at all. Qin Wentian smiled as he nodded his head. Of course not. You broke through again. Seems like there's hope for you to contend for the heavenly fate rankings. Fan Lu laughed. Right now, Qin Wentian's cultivation base was at the 6th level of Yuanfu. If he used his full strength, his combat prowess should be able to defeat ordinary 8th level Yuanfu cultivators. If he continued to raise his cultivation base, he would definitely be able to contend for the heavenly fate rankings. You're not bad as well. Qin Wendian could naturally tell that Fan Li's cultivation base had also reached the 6th level of Yuanfu. This little fellow had been diligently cultivating these few days, and with the Arrow Emperor's supervision, it was impossible for him to slack off. Big bro Chu Mang, you have to work hard. Qin Wendian smiled as he glanced at Chu Mang. Hee, my cultivation speed is a little slower. Chu Mang grinned. No, Big Bro Mang, your cultivation speed has always been very fast. It's only because your cultivation base is higher now that you're slower. Qin Wendian replied. Qin Wendian nodded his head in agreement. Cultivation would only get harder the further one went. After reaching the peak of Yuanfu, it would be even harder to break through to Heavenly Dipper. Not only would one have to condense their astral novas, they would also have to comprehend the 2nd level of mandates. Little fellow, do you want to cultivate archery as well? I can teach you. The Arrow Emperor smiled as he stared at Qin Wendian. Senior, don't bite off more than you can chew. For now, it's better for me to focus on the mandate I'm proficient in. In the future, let's see what my 4th astral soul is. At that time, I might be able to cultivate another type of mandate. Qin Wendian politely replied. That's right, for stellar martial cultivators, the mandate they cultivate is usually determined by their astral souls. You have to choose your 4th astral soul carefully. Remember to choose an astral soul that can bring out your advantages. At the end, the effects of astral souls would be extremely important. The Arrow Emperor cautioned. Junior will listen to your teachings. Qin Wendian nodded his head. The seniors of the unmatched realm were all extremely friendly. If it was in the external world, it would be extremely difficult to meet people of this level. Naturally, this was also because of the unique nature of the unmatched realm. Those who could cultivate here were all geniuses with extremely high potential. During these few months when Qin Wendian was diligently cultivating, Lin Haotian had sought out Qin Wendian many times. But every time, he would discover that Qin Wendian was at the Dao Cultivation Mountain. Lin Haotian didn't dare to disturb Qin Wendian. Naturally, there were some Dao Cultivation Mountains that he wasn't allowed to enter. Lin Haotian had already spread the news that Qin Wendian was intentionally hiding, not daring to face Lin Haotian and Yu Bingying. However, this was understandable. Qin Wendian's strength was still too weak. Lin Haotian and Yu Bingying were already extremely difficult to deal with, let alone Situ Pa. Situ Pa wasn't someone that Qin Wendian could afford to antagonize. At the very least, Qin Wendian couldn't afford to offend him yet. Chapter 321. Occasionally, he would find a cave dwelling to comprehend his insights, and occasionally, he would find a Dao cultivating mountain to listen to the teachings of the seniors. Qin Wendian enjoyed this process very much. His strength was improving bit by bit every day, and although it wasn't as drastic as breaking through to the next cultivation level, dripping water could penetrate a stone. Just this little bit of improvement was enough to make him much stronger than when he first arrived in the unmatched realm. However, as time passed, the speed of his improvement also began to slow down. Today, Qin Wendian was strolling through an ancient mountain. Inclining his head, he saw a silhouette clad in white walking over. This silhouette was elegant and refined, akin to a snow lotus on an icy mountain. This was none other than the female Qin Wendian had sparred with before. This female had sparred with Qin Wendian during the test he took to enter the unmatched realm. She was extremely powerful, and it seemed that she was someone special. She was the one who informed him that he had obtained the authority to cultivate in the 36 mountain peaks. In that case, who was the one who gave the order? Someone who had the authority to give him the authority to cultivate in the 36 mountain peaks must have a very high status in the unmatched realm. The white-robed female also noticed Qin Wendian's presence. She halted her steps as she stared at Qin Wendian. After which, she asked in a low voice, "Did your strength improve during these few days?" "Yes, I did." Would there be a chance for me to spar with you again? Qin Wendian smiled. It wasn't that he was competitive, it was just that this female was extremely powerful. She was at the 8th level of Yuanfu and had a mandate at the perfection boundary. This made Qin Wendian really want to know how great the disparity was between him and such a character. Back then, he had heard from Kanglin that the person behind Yu Bingying, Situ Po's strength should be roughly the same as this female's. Fine, the white-robed female stared at Qin Wendian as she lightly nodded her head, go all out. The astral energy within Qin Wendian's body surged as the power of his bloodline circulated through his veins. His blood boiled as his battle intent soared to the heavens. A terrifying demonic qi gushed forth, and even before he made his move, Qin Wendian's demeanor had already transformed, as though he had transformed into a desolate primordial beast. Qin Wendian didn't stand on ceremony with his opponent. His silhouette instantly dashed out. He knew that his opponent was at the 8th level of Yuanfu, 2 levels higher than him. Not only that, his mandate of ice and snow was at the perfection boundary, his opponent's mandate of ice and snow could easily suppress him. A terrifying demonic light flashed as Qin Wendian unleashed a monstrous amount of demonic qi, akin to an enraged Kirin roaring. The terrifying currents of energy in the air moved according to his will, blasting towards the white-robed female. This terrifying might was so great that even space itself seemed to be on the verge of shattering. If the white-robed female was struck by this attack, she would definitely be torn to shreds. The woman blasted out with her palms, similarly exuding a mysterious rhythm. With her at the center, the space around her seemed to be frozen. Everywhere her palms passed by, everything would be frozen solid. The icy wind gusted by, causing Qin Wendian to feel an intense sense of coldness. However, his fists were still as unstoppable as ever, like a hot knife cutting through butter. Roar! A terrifying roar erupted from his fist. The countenance of the white-robed female was as cold as ever, and that palm strike of hers was capable of freezing everything in front of her. Bang! Their attacks collided in the air as the ice-cold qi transformed into countless icicles, piercing towards Qin Wendian's body. A terrifying coldness was transmitted through his fist, directly into his body. Qin Wendian retreated as his left palm blasted outwards, shattering the icicle. However, the silhouette of the female didn't falter in the slightest. The terrifying coldness she emanated caused Qin Wendian to involuntarily shiver. Such a powerful attack was actually neutralized by her. An expression of shock appeared on Qin Wendian's face. The speed of the white-robed female was exceedingly fast. A pair of Garuda wings instantly appeared on Qin Wendian's back as he soared into the skies. The silhouette of the white-robed female spun in the air, dancing with the wind. Qin Wendian discovered that there seemed to be wind shadows surrounding her. Her lithe and graceful body was enveloped by a mysterious wind energy, causing her speed to increase even more. Her palms waved lightly as the mandate of ice and snow at the perfection boundary enveloped this entire space, freezing everything. A leaf that was fluttering in the air was instantly frozen into ice and snow. Qin Wendian's body was about to be buried within the ice and snow. My mandates are inferior to hers. Hence, my mandates were sealed. If not, if my mandates reached the perfection boundary and my dreams were stronger than hers, I would be able to force her into a deep slumber instead of being sealed in ice. Qin Wendian mused. Qin Wendian mused as towering sword qi gushed forth from his body. Swishing sounds rang out as the ice shattered. However, the white-robed female silhouette had already appeared before him. With a flip of his palms, demonic qi erupted forth. Qin Wendian's eyes were like that of a demon as he stabbed out with his finger. Instantly, boundless amounts of demonic qi erupted forth, converging into a terrifying vortex that shot towards the white-robed female. The woman's expression changed slightly. She clasped her hands together and in an instant, her entire body was covered in ice and snow. It was as if her entire body had been frozen solid, transforming into a layer of ice and snow. The heaven-breaking finger landed on the ice armor, causing cracking sounds to ring out unceasingly. When the ice and snow were completely destroyed, the power of the heaven-breaking finger had also been exhausted. It was obvious that the woman's defensive ability was extremely strong. However, Qin Wentian's body had already descended. His Yuanfu trembled as the divine energy in his body erupted forth. This punch contained an overwhelming might. He believed that the white-robed female would be able to neutralize it with her cultivation base at the 8th level of Yuanfu. The white-robed female merely stared at Qin Wentian, watching as the terrifying attack descended upon her. Qin Wentian's eyes gleamed with sharpness as he released his mandate of dreams. Even now, he had no intentions of retreating. He wanted to see how strong his opponent was exactly. Bzzz. A beam of light flashed by, akin to a gust of wind brushing past Qin Wentian's body, causing others to be unable to detect it. Peng! The terrifying might of the attack reverberated through the air, yet Qin Wentian had an expression of shock on his face. His strongest attack had actually landed on nothing but air. He would rather his opponent had used a powerful technique to neutralize his attack. That would have made him feel better, because he actually couldn't even touch his opponent's body. Retracting his aura, Qin Wentian turned to the side, staring at the white-robed female as a bitter smile appeared on his face. Such a sense of defeat caused the excitement he felt during these past few days to instantly vanish. If his opponent had acted earlier, he would have already been defeated. The white-robed female hadn't even used her full strength yet. You are already very strong. My mandate of wind has already reached the perfection boundary of the 1st level, the white-robed female calmly stated. Qin Wentian nodded his head lightly. This was the suppression of mandates. A mandate at the perfection boundary had an absolute advantage against him. Even if his strength wasn't inferior to his opponent's, and might even be stronger than hers, so what? The barbarian king had said that the mandate of force was an extremely powerful mandate. In truth, any mandate was extremely powerful, and the stronger one's cultivation base was, the stronger one would be. The mandate of ice and snow, using the power of ice to seal the movements of others, and the mandate of wind to instantly descend. Such a combination of mandates is truly terrifying. Qin Wentian murmured. The white-robed female replied, the combination of the mandates of anyone is extremely terrifying. If your mandate of dreams is able to gain the upper hand, causing others to fall into a deep slumber, in addition to the strength of your attacks, who would be able to block you? That's true, many thanks for sparring with me. Qin Wentian didn't really care too much about victory or defeat. He smiled at the white-robed female, my name is Qin Wentian, I still don't know your name. The white-robed female stared at the smile on Qin Wentian's face as she lightly replied, Yunmenyi. Little fellow, are you trying to woo beauties? At this moment, a voice abruptly drifted into his ears. Qin Wentian was startled, and as he turned his gaze over, a bright light flickered in his eyes. Not far away from him, an old man with messy hair and casual robes appeared on top of a boulder. The old man had a smile that was not a smile on his face as he stared at Qin Wentian, his eyes flickering with a hint of playfulness. Even with Qin Wentian's current perception, he had no idea when the other party had appeared. There was no movement at all. I'm leaving. Yunmenyi glared at the old man before departing, causing Qin Wentian to be stunned. He then turned to the old man as he smiled, Senior, are you Yunmenyi's master? What? You're eyeing me now. The old man's eyes narrowed into slits, exuding a treacherous aura. Qin Wentian was speechless. This old man was probably the one who didn't care about his image the most in the unmatched realm. He was even worse than the barbarian king. But with your strength, it's not enough to woo a girl. The words of the old man caused Qin Wentian to be completely speechless. He couldn't be bothered to refute. If Senior has nothing else, this junior will take his leave first. Qin Wentian bowed to the old man before turning and departing, causing the old man to be stunned. Brat, don't regret it when you leave. The old man threatened him. Farewell. With his back facing the old man, Qin Wentian waved his hands as he quickened his pace. In the blink of an eye, he had already descended the mountain, causing the eyes of the old man to blink a few times. "What are you looking at? All of you scram out here for your father," the old man suddenly scolded. Momentarily, several silhouettes appeared, staring at the old man with a smile in their eyes. "Who dares to laugh again?" The old man was enraged. Abruptly, the entire space around him froze. The smiles on the faces of those newcomers instantly turned awkward as they retracted their trembling hands. Yet in their hearts, they were filled with disdain for this old man. He had been humiliated by a junior, yet he still wanted to vent his anger on them. "Little barbarian, tell me, what do you think of this brat?" The old man stood atop a boulder as he pointed to a muscular silhouette, exuding an air of authority. Every time the barbarian king heard this form of address, he would curse the old man in his heart 10,000 times. He, the barbarian king, was actually called Little Barbarian. Luckily, there were no juniors present, or he would definitely lose all his face. This brat's talent is barely passable, he only managed to pass several trials because of some fortuitous encounters. He definitely wouldn't be able to enter your eyes. Even if you wanted me to teach him, I wouldn't agree to it. The barbarian king spoke with a deadpan expression, his words causing the old man to roll his eyes. "Scram, you better scram for me. Not a single word of truth came out of your mouth. Go go go, all of you are not allowed to speak carelessly about what happened today." "Oh." The barbarian king and the others nodded their heads as they sped away. That old man sat atop the boulder, his beady eyes gleaming, it was unknown what he was thinking. Chapter 322. Qin Wendian arrived at the Dao cultivation mountain of the Arrow Emperor. Chu Mang stood at the side practicing his archery, while Qin Wendian was guiding a young lady in archery. This young lady was clad in a green dress, exuding an aura of innocence and vitality. She had a light smile on her face, she was extremely beautiful. "Senior brother Fanlo, why don't you shoot the setting sun arrow once more for me to see?" The young lady smiled sweetly. "Sure." Fanlo nodded. Without hesitation, he nocked an arrow and shot it out. The setting sun arrow was so powerful that it seemed as though the sun itself was about to descend. 10 arrows shot out in a row, interlocking with each other as the power of the arrows stacked on top of each other. "Senior brother, you're so awesome." The young lady smiled. After which, she turned her head, and when she saw Qin Wendian, an expression of curiosity appeared on her face. Qin Wendian scrutinized this young lady, and couldn't help but sigh in admiration in his heart. What a beautiful lass, this young lady gave off a surreal feeling, as though she was a girl from a dream. "Boss, this is Xian Xian, my junior apprentice sister. She's also proficient in archery." Fan Lu also noticed Qin Wendian as he smiled and introduced. "So you're Qin Wendian? I've been hearing your name ever since I came to the unmatched realm." Xian Xian winked at Qin Wendian. Her beauty caused people to feel extremely comfortable just looking at her. "Xian Xian." Qin Wendian smiled as he nodded. After which, he glanced at Fatty Fan Lu. The Arrow Emperor had accepted such a beautiful female disciple, this Fatty's spring was about to arrive. "Oh yeah boss, you have something to discuss with Big Bro Chu Mang, right? In that case, you guys can leave first. Xian Xian and I will cultivate for a while longer." Fan Lu continued, his words causing Qin Wendian to blink. This damnable fatty, was he afraid that he and Chu Mang would be a hindrance to him? "Big Bro Chu Mang, let's go." Qin Wendian glared at Fan Lu, before following Chu Mang away. Fan Lu smiled at Xian Xian, Big Bro Chu Mang and Boss Qin Wendian are both extremely talented, they can be ranked at the very top in the unmatched realm, only slightly inferior to me. Chu Mang and Qin Wendian, who had yet to walk far, had black lines on their faces when they heard this. This damn fatty, even if he wanted to show off, there was no need to drag the two of them down with him. "Didn't you say that Qin Wendian obtained the right to cultivate in the 36 mountains?" Xian Xian's voice came from afar. Emichum, he's always together with me. He's more all-round, but he's more specialized in one area. My talent lies in archery and my mental energy. If we were to talk about individual talents, I'm still slightly better than him. Fan Lu replied with a straight face. Qin Wentian and Chu Mang were completely defeated. Chu Mang returned to the Dao Cultivation Mountain where his master Qiao Long resided, while Qin Wentian found a cave dwelling to cultivate. However, just as he entered a trance, a whistling sound suddenly drifted out, extremely ear-piercing to the ears. The bone-chilling wind was as sharp as knives, causing Qin Wentian to shiver involuntarily. Opening his eyes, a sharp glint of sharpness flashed in his eyes. After which, he saw a terrifying hurricane gushing towards him. What's going on? Qin Wentian's countenance stiffened, he abruptly stood up and dashed out of the cave dwelling. However, that terrifying hurricane directly slammed into his body, causing him to be unable to stand stably. Bzzz, the tyrannical wind slammed into him, causing Qin Wentian's body to be flung through the air. With a thunderous boom, he slammed violently into the wall, causing him to groan in agony. He felt as though his bones were about to shatter. Where did this strange wind come from? Qin Wentian's gaze froze as he stared outside. The wind was the most violent in the passageway ahead of him. There were also gusts of wind that seeped into the cave dwelling, but it wasn't as strong as the one in the passageway. Standing up, Qin Wentian's entire body was brimming with a tyrannical energy. He walked out step by step, but the instant he stepped into the passageway, the raging wind slammed into his body, causing him to be unable to open his eyes. Boom! Taking another step forward, his foot landed on the ground with great difficulty. His body was once again flung into the air, slamming into the wall of the cave with extreme speed. Who's there? Qin Wentian roared. It was impossible for a demonic wind to appear here for no reason. There must be someone there. Taking a step forward, he soared up into the air and punched out with all his might. The cave trembled violently, yet not a single piece of stone cracked. It was as though the stone walls of the cave had transformed into the toughest of ancient stones, unable to be penetrated. Not even a single tremor could be felt. Qin Wentian tried a few more places, but in the end, he was completely dumbfounded. He was trapped. Someone had trapped him inside the cave dwelling. The demonic wind buffeted against his body, causing him to feel exceptionally cold. Qin Wentian stared at the passageway ahead of him, which wasn't very long. I don't believe it. Qin Wentian's blood thrummed as the astral energy in his body surged violently. Releasing his will of the mandate of force, demonic chi filled the air. His body transformed into a Garuda as he abruptly dashed out of the passageway. Bzzz. His silhouette was like a bolt of lightning as he dashed into the whirlwind. However, he only managed to traverse a third of the passageway before he found himself unable to advance any further. This time around, because he had used too much strength, the speed at which he was flung back was even faster. When he slammed into the wall of the cave, he involuntarily coughed out a mouthful of blood as his internal organs shuddered violently. Qin Wentian climbed to his feet once more, and tried many more times. Gradually, despair filled his heart. He couldn't exit the passageway, and was trapped within the cave dwelling. Not only that, the demonic wind gradually permeated the interior of the cave, growing stronger and stronger. I can't do this. If I still can't restrain this wind, I will definitely be tortured to death in here. Qin Wentian's countenance turned ashen. His strength was still not strong enough. He fell again, and after 3 days, Qin Wentian no longer had the slightest bit of temper left in him. He didn't even know how many mouthfuls of blood he had coughed out. If it wasn't for his powerful physique and bloodline, he would already be half dead by now. Who did this? Qin Wentian was speechless in his heart. Within the cave dwelling, the sounds of impact rang out unceasingly. In the blink of an eye, half a month passed. Qin Wentian was finally able to endure the wind for a short period of time. His strength circulated throughout his entire body, and his mandate of demons transformed his body, allowing him to enter his strongest state. But even so, he still had no way to exit the cave. And now, the wind was everywhere. Right now, Qin Wentian's body was glued to the wall. It wasn't that he wanted to stick to the wall, but rather, he was stuck to the wall by the wind. His countenance was as pale as paper, and he looked much more haggard than before. Thousands of times, Qin Wendian coughed out blood in the wind. In his heart, he had already cursed the person who caused the wind to enter. If his curses were fulfilled, it was unknown how many times that person would have died. In the outside world, on top of an ancient tree outside the cave, an old man who was lying there yawned. His body flipped over as though he was in deep sleep. At this moment, an illusory figure lunged towards him. However, the old man merely blew a breath of air, causing the illusory figure to tumble in the air and be blown away. Roar! The eyes of Little Rascal, which had transformed into a ferocious beast, gleamed with a golden light as it stared at the old man. However, the old man completely ignored it, continuing to sleep. AI, there are too few elders like me who are willing to guide their juniors. Kind-hearted people are always misunderstood by others. The old man mumbled to himself. Upon hearing his words, Little Rascal bared its fangs as a ferocious expression appeared on its face. If Qin Wendian were to hear the words of this kind-hearted old man, he would definitely be so angered that he would cough out a few more mouthfuls of blood. A month passed. Qin Wendian was tormented for an entire month. He didn't know how many times his bones were broken and how much blood he coughed out. The amount of blood he coughed out was sufficient for Little Rascal to use for an entire year. Many people in the outside world said that Qin Wendian had gone into hiding, not daring to show his face in front of others. His silhouette disappeared from the Daoist mountains as well. 2 months later, within the quiet cave, the sound of the wind could still be heard. Finally, a figure staggered out, only to see that the moment he exited the cave, he plopped down on the ground. His robes and hair were in a complete mess, he was in no mood to tidy himself up. Qin Wendian, who was lying on the ground, stared fixedly at the old man sleeping on the ancient tree in front of him. His eyes seemed capable of killing. Revenge, this was undisguised revenge. As the peerless old man, this old man actually wanted to take revenge on him. Who's cursing me? The old man's body twitched as he opened his eyes. When he saw Qin Wendian glaring at him, his eyes narrowed as he laughed. You don't have to thank me. I'm such a kind-hearted person, I don't seek repayment for my actions. Junior will definitely repay Senior if there's a chance. Qin Wendian gritted his teeth. No need, no need. The old man sat up, his body trembled as he slowly walked away. He didn't forget to wave his hands as he spoke, harmonize as one, strength at the perfection boundary. After the matter is settled, I will brush my robes and leave, concealing my strength and fame. After the matter is settled, I will brush my robes and leave, concealing my strength and fame. When Qin Wendian heard this, he wanted nothing more than to give the old man a good beating. However, it was obvious that he wasn't a match for the old man. Most probably, the old man could blast him off the mountain with just a wave of his hand. Harmonize as one, strength at the perfection boundary. Qin Wendian's heart pounded as his gaze froze on the old man. His mandate of force, perfection boundary. So that's how it was. If he wanted to exit, he had to achieve a state where he could circulate his strength throughout his entire body. Only then would he be able to resist the demonic wind. After repeated attempts, he finally managed to achieve a state where his mandate of force broke through to the perfection boundary. Damned old man, don't land in my hands. Qin Wendian had a bitter smile on his face. Such a breakthrough was simply too tyrannical. Only an old man like him would be able to think of something like this. If he hadn't reached the perfection boundary, he would have died sooner or later. Qin Wendian closed his eyes, and just like that, he lay down on the ground and fell into a deep sleep. This sleep lasted for 7 days and 7 nights, it was too comfortable. Qin Wendian didn't even want to wake up. Currently, it had already been half a year since Qin Wendian arrived in the Azure continent. Over the past 6 months, his strength had been constantly changing, and the others were also constantly improving. Ouyang Guangsheng had already stepped into the 7th level of Yuanfu. Wang Xiao was the same as well, advancing to the upper 3 levels of Yuanfu. Not only them, the people of the unmatched realm and the 9 continents were all improving as well. They were all cultivating in different places, in different clans, in different life and death situations, or even in secret realms. To those true geniuses, none of them were willing to waste time. Sometimes, a single step late could mean the difference between life and death. Currently, many of the geniuses in the 9 continents were already heading towards the Ginkgo continent. There were also some who still hoped to grow stronger. Only then would they have a chance to stand out amongst the geniuses. Chapter 323. During the period of time that Qin Wendian was trapped in the cavern, a major event occurred in the unmatched realm. Fatty had fallen in love. If it was merely Fatty falling in love, it wouldn't be a big deal. But the problem was that Fatty was in love with Xian Xian. Her identity was actually the little princess of the Mystic Maiden Palace. This matter was too big. Fatty was in big trouble now. The Mystic Maiden Palace was different from many other powers. They only accepted female disciples, and only those with the highest talent would have the qualifications to become a direct descendant of the unmatched realm. The little princess of the Mystic Maiden Palace, Xian Xian, was one of them. At this moment, in the unmatched realm, a group of silhouettes had gathered together. Many people were observing from all directions, including those from the Mystic Maiden Palace. Their countenances were all ice-cold, their countenances ashen. Among them were Wang Zhao's girlfriend, Qiao Xian, as well as Lu Shi, who was violently beaten up by Qin Wendian. Although they would usually be jealous of Xian Xian, right now, only rage could be seen on their faces as they stared coldly at the chubby figure in front of them. Fatty Fan Lu, Qin Wendian's friend. Xian Xian, come over here. In the center of the Mystic Maiden Palace was Li Shiyu. She had a cultivation base at the 8th level of Yuanfu, and was a heaven's chosen of the Mystic Maiden Palace. But even someone as outstanding as her couldn't obtain the status of a princess. Sister Shiyu, the two of us are truly in love with each other. Xian Xian stared at those from the Mystic Maiden Palace, feeling a little afraid. Xian Xian, don't be fooled by the flowery words of this fatty. Li Shiyu coldly replied. Come over here first. Forget it, Sister Shiyu. Xian Xian held on to Fan Li's hand, feeling a little afraid. Fan Li tightly held onto her dainty hand as he straightened his slightly chubby chest. This was originally an extremely courageous action, but when he did it, it caused the spectators to have the urge to laugh out loud. How could a beautiful flower be spoiled? How could Xian Xian possibly like this fatty? This caused them, who had always thought of themselves as suave and handsome, to be unable to accept this fact. I will take Xian Xian as my wife. Fan Li seriously stated. This time around, he was truly in love with this innocent and radiant lass. Xian Xian was extremely intelligent, and although she knew that he was boasting, she didn't expose him. She would only stand at the side and laugh happily. You want to take Xian Xian as your wife? Who do you think you are? In your dreams. Li Shiyu coldly stared at Fan Lu. Do you know who Xian Xian is? You don't know what's good for you. You actually want to curry favor with someone powerful. Lin Haotian crossed his arms in front of his chest as he coldly spoke. The females of the Mystic Maiden Palace had always been the target of the geniuses of the Azure continent. Who would have thought that this fatty would actually be able to capture the heart of the little princess? Li Shiyu, in the unmatched realm, there's nothing you can do to him. If he truly likes the little princess, give him a chance and ask him if he dares to follow you to the Mystic Maiden Palace. Another voice rang out. Yu Bingying had a faint smile on her face. She had already given the order to search for Qin Wentian for quite a few days, but to no avail. Qin Wentian had always been hiding from her. She heard that Qin Wentian was a good friend of Qin Wentian. If anything happened to Qin Wentian would definitely appear. Yes, Xian Xin. Since you said that he likes you, why don't you ask him if he dares to follow you back to the Mystic Maiden Palace? Li Shiyu spoke to Xian Xin, yet her gaze was fixed on Fan Lu. Xian Xin shook her head. No, I won't let him go. You. Li Shiyu's beautiful eyes froze, her countenance extremely unsightly to behold. Oi, Li Shiyu, I feel that my friend and Xian Xin are quite compatible. How did he sully you? It's not like he wants you. A carefree laughter rang out. Li Shiyu turned her gaze over, staring at a few silhouettes not far away from Fan Lu. Ouyang Guangsheng appeared there, and the words spoken earlier came from his mouth. Ouyang Guangsheng, don't think that I won't dare to touch you just because you're from the Ouyang aristocrat clan. Li Shiyu coldly spoke. Did I hit the nail on the head? You're so anxious that no one would want you. My friend Chu Mang, his talent is extremely high, he should be a good match for you. Do you want to consider him? Ouyang Guangsheng pointed to Chu Mang beside him as he teased, causing Chu Mang to glance at Li Shiyu as he replied in a low voice, I don't want her. Eh. As the sound of Chu Mang's voice faded, the eyes of the crowd froze. Even Ouyang Guangsheng was stunned by those few simple words. After which, he started laughing uproariously. Chu Mang was simply too adorable. Upon seeing Li Shiyu's countenance gradually turning unsightly, the spectators couldn't help but perspire. Chu Mang's words made it sound as though he didn't want Li Shiyu even if she was a gift to him. All of you are very good. A cold intent gushed forth from Li Shiyu. Momentarily, the few maidens from the Mystic Maiden Palace all exuded an oppressive might, causing the spectators to disperse. Ouyang Guangsheng furrowed his brows. They wanted to start a war. It seemed that his side was at a disadvantage. Li Shiyu's cultivation base was at the 8th level of Yuanfu, while Chu Mang's cultivation base was at the peak of the 7th level. Not only that, he himself had only broken through to the 7th level not too long ago. Over on the side of the Mystic Maiden Palace, Lu Shi was also at the 7th level. As for the other 3 maidens, one was at the 7th level while the other 2 were at the 6th level. The majority of the young geniuses who came to the unmatched realm were at the middle or upper 3 levels of Yuanfu. After breaking through to the Heavenly Dipper realm, many of them would leave the unmatched realm. It was impossible for them to stay here forever. After breaking through to the Heavenly Dipper realm, the benefits that the unmatched realm provided to them would gradually diminish. Hence, the number of Heavenly Dipper sovereigns in the unmatched realm was far less than Yuanfu. At this moment, on the side of the Mystic Maiden Palace, there were a total of 5. 1 at the 8th level, 2 at the 7th level, and 2 at the 6th level. On their side, other than Xian Xin, there were 3 others. 2 at the 7th level and 1 at the 6th level. Evidently, they were the weaker side. If they were to fight, they would definitely lose. There were still a few people from the Ouyang aristocrat clan present. One of them was Ouyang Ting. Duan Qingshan had already broken through to Heavenly Dipper, while she remained in the unmatched realm to cultivate. Currently, her cultivation base was already at the 6th level of Yuanfu. Other than Ouyang Ting, there were still some others present. However, they wouldn't act. Ouyang Guangsheng was merely helping an outsider, it had nothing to do with the Ouyang aristocrat clan. Ouyang Guangsheng would settle this himself. From afar, a man and a demonic beast soared through the air. When they saw the crowd gathered here, they couldn't help but be stunned. That person was none other than Qin Wentian. He saw that in the middle of the crowd, it was actually Fan Lu, Ouyang Guangsheng, and the others. It seemed that they were in a standoff with another group of people. What's going on? Quickening his steps, Qin Wentian's silhouette was like the wind, moving towards the direction of the crowd. Many in the crowd turned their gazes over when they heard his voice. Qin Wentian, he had finally appeared. Many in the crowd turned their gazes onto Yu Bingying. She had been looking for Qin Wentian for quite some time now, but Qin Wentian had always ignored her. Although she had always thought that he was avoiding her, but since Qin Wentian hadn't appeared from the start till now, it could also be understood that he was ignoring her. "You little fellow, you're finally willing to show yourself." Ouyang Guangsheng hadn't seen Qin Wentian for a long time, and he couldn't help but smile upon seeing Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian stood in the air, yet his path forward was blocked by a few silhouettes from the Sword Extinction sect. Lin Haotian stepped out, staring at Qin Wentian. Back then, when he went to the place where the ocean waves intersected, he told Qin Wentian that someone wanted to see him. However, Qin Wentian angrily told him to scram. During that period of time, Qin Wentian had always been hiding within the divine inscriptions. Now, he had finally appeared. "You finally dared to come out." Lin Haotian's countenance was akin to a sharp sword, piercing towards Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian glanced at him. This person was none other than the person who had interrupted his cultivation back then. According to Kanglin, this person should be someone from the Sword Extinction sect who ran errands for Situ Pa. "Fatty, did you cause trouble?" Qin Wentian merely glanced at Lin Haotian before shifting his gaze onto Fan Lo. He also saw Fan Lo holding onto Xian Xian's hand, and couldn't help but to curse in his heart. This damnable fatty was truly a genius, to think that he would actually succeed in wooing Xian Xian. Qin Wentian was already praying for Xian Xian in his heart. How could this adorable young lady endure this shameless fatty? "Me and Xian Xian are in love with each other, is this also called causing trouble?" Fan Lo shamelessly continued, "However, Xian Xian, she is the little princess of the Mystic Maiden Palace." "I didn't know this before." Fatty's lips curled up in an expression of arrogance. He, Fatty, was the little princess of the Mystic Maiden Palace. Fine. Qin Wentian instantly understood what was going on, and his admiration for Fatty grew even more intense. "However, it seems like I'm not the only one who caused trouble." Fan Le glanced at Lin Haotian, who was blocking Qin Wentian's path. This person was rumored to be an extremely powerful character, a heaven's chosen of the Sword Extinction sect. It was only because of Situ Po's presence that Lin Haotian's radiance wasn't as dazzling as before. "You better think about yourself first. How should we resolve the matter between us?" Lin Haotian's voice was like a sharp sword, directed at Qin Wentian. "Back then, you told me to scram. Now, tell me, how should we resolve this?" "Indeed, it's time to resolve the matter between us." Qin Wentian nodded his head in agreement. Interrupting his cultivation, and even taking the initiative to settle the debt with him? In the world of cultivation, the strength of one's martial prowess determined who was right and who was wrong. "Tell me, how should we resolve this?" Qin Wentian stared at Lin Haotian as he asked. Lin Haotian's gaze shifted onto Yu Bingying, who was not far away. Qin Wentian followed his gaze and instantly recalled who Yu Bingying was. She was a maiden from the Azure Emperor Palace. Maybe in the future, he would have to meet her again. After all, when he grew stronger, he would definitely reorganize the hidden Azure faction and seize back the true Azure Emperor Palace. "You guys test him first, see if he has the qualifications to spar. If he doesn't, you can settle it yourself," Yu Bingying casually stated. In truth, the reason why she wanted to meet with Qin Wentian was purely out of curiosity. She wanted to see if this person who obtained the authority to cultivate the 36 halls was as outstanding as Situ Pa. However, Qin Wentian actually refused to meet with her. "Spar." Qin Wentian laughed. Yu Bingying really overestimated herself. If she wanted him to spar, he would have to appear. Bzzz, sword light flashed as the two experts from the Sword Extinction sect made their moves. At the same time, Lin Haotian unsheathed his sword as sword chi gushed forth from him. He knew that it was impossible for the other two to defeat Qin Wentian. Back then, Qin Wentian had already defeated Lu Shi, who was at the 6th level of Yuanfu. Two beams of cold light shot towards Qin Wentian, but just as they were about to land on Qin Wentian, a crisp sound rang out. The crowd inclined their heads, only to see the two experts from the sword extinction sect hovering in the air. Their swords were held by Qin Wentian with his bare hands. Using his bare hands to grasp the edge of the sword. Chapter 324. Swords were known for their sharpness, and their attacks were extremely powerful. Sword cultivators from the sword extinction sect were all extremely dangerous. A cultivator at the 6th level of Yuanfu from the sword extinction sect actually used a sword attack. For cultivators at the 7th or 8th level of Yuanfu, even those at the 9th level of Yuanfu wouldn't dare to disregard their attacks. However, Qin Wentian used his bare hands to directly grab hold of the sharpness of the sword. Not only that, his movements were so precise that there was no mistaking it. Only to see Qin Wentian's palms flickering with demonic qi. The countenances of the two cultivators from the sword extinction sect froze, but their reactions were also extremely fast. Sword qi gushed forth from the tip of their swords, causing Qin Wentian to loosen his grip. Their silhouettes intertwined, transforming into a resplendent beam of light as the two swords slashed down onto Qin Wentian's body. Qin Wentian still stood there, calmly staring at the two of them. At this instant, the countenances of the two cultivators paled. Their attacks were completely disregarded. Not only did Qin Wentian use his bare hands to grab hold of the sword, he even allowed their attacks to land on his body. Even Lin Haotian was dumbfounded as he stared at the scene in front of him. How was this possible? How powerful were the attacks of the two cultivators? Yet they couldn't even break through Qin Wentian's defense? Sword extinction sect. You want me to meet you with just your level of strength? Qin Wentian calmly replied. His physique was akin to a demonic beast, and his physique was many times stronger compared to ordinary humans. Cultivators at the 6th level of Yuanfu were equivalent to demonic beasts at the peak of the 6th level of Yuanfu. Demonic beasts at the 6th level of Yuanfu had a physique that could withstand attacks from cultivators at the same level as them. Although they might not be able to withstand the might of a sword cultivator, Qin Wentian was different. Not only did he have the physique of a demonic beast, his mandate of demons had also reached the perfection boundary of the 1st level of the mandate of force. Therefore, Qin Wentian could ignore his opponent's attack. When the two of them heard Qin Wentian's words, they already wanted to retreat. Both of them could be considered extraordinary characters, hence they were able to enter the unmatched realm to cultivate. Yet, they couldn't even break through Qin Wentian's defenses. How could they continue to fight? In the instant that they retreated, Qin Wentian struck out with both of his palms at the same time, transforming into a gigantic demonic seal with terrifying demonic qi that instantly blasted onto the two of them. With a loud bang, the two of them were sent flying. Their auras fluctuated and they coughed up blood. Their faces were deathly pale. They couldn't break through Qin Wentian's defense, but a casual attack from Qin Wentian was something they couldn't withstand. This strength. Ouyang Guangsheng's eyes gleamed with sharpness. This fellow's strength was too terrifying. Qin Wentian looked at Lin Haotian, only to see him staring at him, but not making a move. Why aren't you attacking yet? Qin Wentian mocked. Lin Haotian's eyes flashed with a hint of trepidation. Based on the strength Qin Wentian had displayed earlier, there was a high possibility that Qin Wentian would be able to defeat him. If that happened, it would be a huge blow to his reputation. He was a heaven's chosen of the sword extinction sect, and his cultivation base was higher than Qin Wentian's. If he was defeated, how would others view him? Seems like you've made some improvements, worthy of me taking you seriously. Lin Haotian's sword intent gushed forth frenziedly. Instantly, with him as the center, a terrifying tempest manifested in the heavens and earth. He took a step forwards as a towering sword might gushed forth, aiming for Qin Wentian's throat. In this entire space, it was as though only the humming of swords could be heard. What a powerful sword force! His sword intent is also at the transformative plane. In addition, Lin Haotian's wind intent is also at the transformative plane. The wind is contained within the sword, and the sword is like the wind. How terrifying is its power? The crowd could feel the sword might surrounding Lin Haotian, as though it was going to tear everything apart. No matter how strong the defense of Qin Wendian's body was, he would not dare to withstand such a sword might. With a single strike of the sword, a person would be cut in half. Boom! Lin Haotian took another step forward. With every step he took, his aura grew stronger. Even the spectators who were standing far away could clearly feel how terrifying the sword might was. It was as if it was going to tear space apart. However, as Lin Haotian took another step forward, the boundless sword might began to converge in front of Lin Haotian. All the sword might was aimed at Qin Wendian. Once the sword of extinction was unleashed, it would be a sure kill attack. The sword extinction sect's sword extinction technique. Once the sword was unleashed, ghosts and gods would be frightened, and all life would be extinguished. Qin Wendian could already feel the terrifying destructive power contained within the sword might. It was as though Lin Haotian's sword had the will to destroy everything in its path. Lin Haotian is too ruthless. With such a powerful sword strike, would he kill Qin Wendian? If that's the case, Lin Haotian wouldn't be able to explain himself. However, this Lin Haotian must have seen through Qin Wendian's strength. Although he was able to injure Qin Wendian with a single strike, Lin Haotian knew that he wouldn't be able to take Qin Wendian's life. The crowd all had their own thoughts. Lin Haotian was indeed worthy of being a heaven's chosen of the sword extinction sect. It was just that he was suppressed by Situ Pa. Lin Haotian's combat prowess was truly tyrannical. The moment he made his move, everyone could feel how terrifying he was. Qin Wendian sensed the power of the storm of swords. The yuan energy in his body surged as a terrifying demonic qi gushed forth from him. Lin Haotian's cultivation base was at the peak of the 7th level of Yuanfu. For Qin Wendian to fight against him, it was undoubtedly equivalent to facing off against an 8th level Yuanfu cultivator. Given Lin Haotian's strength, he would be able to suppress ordinary 8th level Yuanfu cultivators with ease. Although this person was arrogant, he was truly powerful. As Lin Haotian advanced step by step, Qin Wendian didn't budge an inch. Yet, the aura he exuded was so terrifying that it was as though he was the ruler of the entire heavens and earth. The demonic qi emanating from him was akin to a primordial beast that could erupt at any moment. Finally, when Lin Haotian's aura reached its peak, he completely erupted forth. His silhouette was like the wind, like a sword. His entire person was akin to a sharp sword. That towering sword might gushed forth, filling the entire heavens and earth with sword light. At the same instant, Qin Wendian also moved. He only took a single step forward, but this single step was akin to the roar of a primordial beast, causing the heavens and earth to tremble. It was as though he had transformed into the sovereign of this world. The destructive sword light was so blinding that it pierced the eyes of the spectators. It was as though the spectators could hear a towering roar as the destructive might of the heavens and earth ravaged the heavens and earth. Only a single strike, Lin Haotian's most terrifying strike, contained the pinnacle of his strength. He didn't want to give Qin Wendian any chance of survival. Yet at this moment, his sword shattered as fresh blood gushed forth. A terrifying palm print could be seen on his chest, and his throat was currently being grasped by a gigantic hand. How is this possible? Lin Haotian's body involuntarily trembled. His life extinction swordplay was actually broken apart by pure strength. Qin Wendian's mandate of strength had already reached the perfection boundary. But even so, Qin Wendian, with a cultivation base at the 6th level of Yuanfu, actually managed to break apart his swordplay. This was something he couldn't accept. Do I even need divine inscriptions to deal with you? The genius of the sword extinction sect only amounts to this much. Qin Wendian abruptly flung his arms out, the terrifying force of his mandate of strength sent Lin Haotian flying through the air. With a thunderous boom, the spectators only saw Lin Haotian's body slamming into a distant mountain rampart, causing their hearts to involuntarily shudder. Qin Wendian, who had stepped into the 6th level of Yuanfu, was simply too terrifying. Lin Haotian of the Sword Extinction sect was completely suppressed. Qin Wendian turned his gaze onto Yu Bingying, as a sharp glint of light flashed in his eyes. Didn't you say you wanted to spar with me? Now, you should have the qualifications to do so, right? Yu Bingying stared at Qin Wendian, as a strange light flickered in her eyes. This Qin Wendian's strength was truly terrifying. His mandate should have already reached the perfection boundary, yet he was still able to defeat Lin Haotian. Although she was strong, when compared to Lin Haotian, she didn't have much of an advantage. It was impossible for her to suppress Lin Haotian the way Qin Wendian did. Hence, she knew that if she fought against Qin Wendian, the probability of her defeat would be extremely high. Being able to obtain the authority to cultivate all 36 halls, you're truly not bad. Yu Bingying laughed lightly, she had no intention to act. It was as though she wanted to let this matter go with a single sentence. And then? Qin Wendian stared at Yu Bingying as he asked. Yu Bingying furrowed her brows. Yu Bingying had already acknowledged Qin Wendian by saying this. Naturally, she wanted to let this matter go. I admit that your talent is very strong. Yu Bingying forced a smile as she continued. Qin Wendian coldly laughed. The moment you said that you wanted to see me, you immediately sent someone to bring me to your side, even interrupting my cultivation. Now that I'm here, do you think I'd care about you saying that your talent is not bad? Who do you think you are? Yu Bingying's countenance sank as the smile on her face disappeared. She had already given him face by acknowledging Qin Wendian. It could be considered a form of compromise, allowing this matter to end here. However, it seemed as though Qin Wendian didn't give her any face at all. What do you want then? Yu Bingying asked. Qin Wendian stared at her as he spoke. Now, get your ass over here, apologize, and this matter will end here. Yu Bingying's countenance turned extremely ugly. Asking her to apologize? What a joke. The spectators all had astonished expressions on their faces. Qin Wendian wanted Yu Bingying to apologize. Wasn't his guts a little too big? Leaving aside the fact that Yu Bingying was from the Azure Emperor Palace, she was also Situ Po's lover. Situ Po was still in the unmatched realm. Qin Wendian wanted Yu Bingying to apologize. In this unmatched realm, you're not the only one with high talent. I'm afraid you won't be able to accept my apology. Yu Bingying's countenance turned cold as she threatened. Bzzz. A raging wind gusted by. Qin Wendian didn't waste any more words. He instantly stepped towards Yu Bingying, his actions extremely decisive. He had always been a man of few words. Yu Bingying's single sentence of wanting to see him had caused trouble for him. If he wasn't strong enough, he would have been humiliated by the Sword Extinction sect today. Asking the other party to apologize wasn't an exaggeration. However, the other party was still so domineering, threatening him with words. Since that's the case, there was no need to waste any more words. Yu Bingying's countenance drastically changed. Her astral souls flickered, but Qin Wendian's aura towered up the heavens, as though he had transformed into an ancient demonic beast. Rock slash, dragon roar, lion roar, Kirin arm, ape strike. He has comprehended the 81 demonic arts of the precipice cliff. The spectators saw Qin Wendian's incomparably tyrannical attacks. Yu Bingying was completely suppressed, and very swiftly, a thunderous boom rang out. Yu Bingying coughed out a mouthful of blood as her long hair and robes were in a mess. She no longer had the slightest bit of elegance and arrogance. Qin Wendian floated in the air, staring down at her. Yu Bingying coldly stated, Situ Po will never forgive you. I, Qin, will naturally consider the consequences of my actions. If Situ Po wants revenge, he can just come and find me. However, you and Situ Po are in a relationship, what's the point of using his name to strut around? For those who don't know, they would think that you, the eldest daughter of the Azure Emperor Palace, sold your body to seek glory. You've simply thrown away the face of the Azure Emperor Palace. Qin Wendian flicked his sleeves as he departed. His words caused Yu Bingying's countenance to fluctuate between shades of green and white, as she involuntarily coughed out another mouthful of blood. The hearts of the spectators were already silently praying for Qin Wentian. This fellow was still as arrogant as the rumors said. Situ Po would surely come looking for him very soon. Qin Wentian would definitely be in dire straits. No matter how terrifying his combat prowess was, it was impossible for him to contend against Situ Po. Regardless of cultivation base or the will of his mandate, Situ Po would completely suppress Qin Wentian. Chapter 325. Ignoring the unsightly expression on Yu Bingying's face, Qin Wentian walked towards Fan Lu and Ouyang Quangsheng. With the addition of Qin Wentian, their strength had undoubtedly increased by several folds. Based on the combat prowess Qin Wentian had displayed earlier, he should be able to fight evenly against Li Shiyu, who was at the 8th level of Yuanfu. Qin Wentian, Chu Mang, Ouyang Quangsheng, and Fan Lu. Against Li Shiyu and the others from the Mystic Maiden Palace, the four of them weren't at a disadvantage at all. Qin Wentian restrained Li Shiyu. With Ouyang Quangsheng's tyrannical combat prowess, he would definitely be able to suppress the 7th level Yuanfu maidens from the Mystic Maiden Palace. Chu Mang was also at the 7th level, he could deal with one of them. The Mystic Maiden Palace had no chance of victory. The spectators all had expressions of interest on their faces. When Qin Wentian first entered the unmatched realm, his cultivation base was only at the 5th level of Yuanfu. Now that he was at the 6th level, his combat prowess had already skyrocketed to such an extent. In just a span of half a year, his improvement was simply too fast. Ouyang Ting's heart trembled when she personally witnessed Qin Wentian's strength. With her own strength, she would never be able to avenge her hatred. Unless she borrowed the strength of the Ouyang aristocrat clan, Ouyang Quangsheng would definitely stop her. Li Shiyu, do you see that? This is my brother Qin Wentian. The people standing before you, Qin Wentian, me, Ouyang Quangsheng, Chu Mang and Fan Lu, which one of us is inferior to the members of your Mystic Maiden Palace? Ouyang Quangsheng smiled as he glanced at Li Shiyu and the others. Xian Xian and Fan Lu being in love wouldn't bring shame to Xian Xian. Although Fatty Fan Lu isn't as handsome as me, his talent is still very good. If you wanted to choose someone from your Mystic Maiden Palace, Xian Xian might not be able to match up to him. Are you helping me or belittling me? Fan Li's lips twitched. This Ouyang Quangsheng's mouth was too despicable. He, Fan Lu, was as handsome as the wind. What did he mean by he wasn't as handsome as him? Humph, Li Shiyu coldly snorted. No matter how she looked at Fan Lu, she couldn't find him to be an eyesore. If Xian Xian had chosen Ouyang Quangsheng or Qin Wentian, she might have been able to accept it. No one from the Sword Extinction sect or the Azure Emperor Palace came. Li Shiyu indifferently swept her gaze across the surroundings. Just now, Qin Wentian had forcefully suppressed Lin Haoyan and the others from the Sword Extinction sect, and had even beaten up Yu Bingying. She didn't believe that they would be able to swallow this anger. Evidently, Li Shiyu herself didn't have the confidence to deal with Qin Wentian and the others. Hence, she wanted to seek help from the Sword Extinction sect and the Azure Emperor Palace. No need. A cold voice drifted over from afar. The gazes of the crowd turned over as their expressions froze. An extraordinary silhouette was currently walking over. He was usually gentle and quiet, but right now, his face was filled with killing intent, causing the hearts of the crowd to involuntarily tremble. They came so fast. In this case, Qin Wentian was doomed. Situ Po's silhouette instantly appeared beside Yu Bingying. Stretching out his hand, he gently wiped away the traces of blood on the corner of Yu Bingying's lips as he asked in a gentle voice, "Are your injuries serious?" "I'm fine, cough cough." Yu Bingying's countenance was still extremely pale. She turned to Situ Po and asked, "Did he say that I sold my body for glory?" "No one would dare to say that." Situ Po gently stroked Yu Bingying's black hair as a smile flickered in his eyes. Yu Bingying lightly nodded her head. After which, Situ Po's silhouette flickered as he turned his gaze onto Lin Haotian and the others. The three experts from the Sword Extinction sect all lowered their heads, not daring to look at Situ Po. They had been defeated too miserably, throwing away the face of the Sword Extinction sect. Be careful, Situ Po is extremely terrifying. He has 2 mandates at the perfection boundary, and 1 at the transformation boundary. His combat prowess is definitely at the 9th level of Yuanfu. If his opponent didn't have a mandate at the perfection boundary, even a peak-level Yuanfu expert would be crushed. Ouyang Guangxing reminded in a low voice, his words causing Qin Wentian's countenance to turn extremely heavy. Although he was decisive in his actions, Lin Haotian and Yu Bingying had no one in their eyes. Naturally, he would have to do something to appease them. However, he wasn't someone who would consider everything beneath his notice. His mandate had already reached the perfection boundary when he was at the 6th level of Yuanfu. Even if he fought against someone at the 8th level of Yuanfu, as long as his opponent's mandate hadn't reached the perfection boundary, he would still be able to fight them head-on. But Situ Po was a character on the same level as him. He had access to all 36 halls of cultivation, and 2 of his mandates had already reached the perfection boundary. The combat prowess of such a character would definitely be terrifying, and he couldn't be treated as an ordinary cultivator at the 8th level of Yuanfu. In fact, it wouldn't even be sufficient to treat him as an ordinary cultivator at the 9th level of Yuanfu. Situ Po's silhouette soared through the air, his gaze sweeping over to Qin Wentian and the others as he calmly stated, "All of you can come at me together." The spectators froze. This Situ Po was truly arrogant. But of course, he had the qualifications to be arrogant. For someone as strong as Situ Po, he would definitely be able to fight against the people in front of him. Or maybe, he didn't want others to say that he, Situ Po, was bullying the weak. After all, his cultivation base was much higher than Qin Wentian's. How arrogant! Fan Lu stared at the silhouette in the air. Naturally, he had heard of Situ Po's name before. Situ Po was a demon-level character who had caused huge waves of commotion in the unmatched realm before Qin Wentian. He would soon become a Heaven's Chosen of the Sword Extinction sect, and at the end of this year, he would challenge the Heavenly Fate rankings. Now, he already had such strength. Let me test out his strength. Chu Mang spoke. As the sound of his voice faded, a resplendent arrow appeared in his hands. Bzzz. The resplendent arrow erupted forth, its speed so fast that even the naked eye couldn't keep up with it. Peng! The arrow directly pierced into Situ Po's chest, the explosive force of the arrow causing the hearts of the spectators to tremble. However, to their astonishment, Situ Po was still standing in the air. Not only that, he hadn't moved in the slightest. In front of his chest, a resplendent layer of light could be seen revolving around it, akin to a layer of stone armor. But in an instant, it vanished from sight. That powerful insta-kill arrow had no way to break through his defense. This level of strength was akin to that of Qin Wentian's sword earlier. The mandate he comprehended is a little unique, it's the mandate of stone, which is extremely close to the mandate of great earth. The first level of the mandate of stone is hardening. His body is instantly enveloped by a layer of light, allowing him to disregard attacks from cultivators at the 8th level of Yuanfu, Ouyang Guangxing explained. He had never seen Situ Po in battle before, he had only heard rumors about him. Maybe Situ Po was even stronger than what the rumors said. Qin Wentian's countenance turned heavy. He was at the 6th level of Yuanfu, and his mandate of strength had already reached the perfection boundary. Situ Po was at the peak of the 8th level of Yuanfu, and had the mandate of stone armor. His defensive prowess was undoubtedly terrifying. No wonder he was so famous in the unmatched realm. Chu Mang brandished his battle axe, only to see Qin Wentian waving his hands to stop him. Those from the Mystic Maiden Palace were still eyeing Situ Po like a tiger watching its prey. Situ Po's combat prowess was obviously higher than theirs. Even if they wanted to fight, they shouldn't have dragged Chu Mang and the rest along. Let me. Qin Wentian's silhouette slowly rose up into the air as the blood in his body churned frenziedly. Rumbling sounds echoed unceasingly as a terrifying demonic chi gushed forth from Qin Wentian's body. His physique was also undergoing a transformation, causing the spectators to stare at him in awe. A layer of demonic armor appeared on Qin Wentian's body, causing his physique to grow taller and taller. That terrifying demonic chi engulfed the entire space as his aura soared madly, causing the spectators to be speechless. Even cultivators at the 7th level of Yuanfu wouldn't have such an overwhelming aura like Qin Wentian's. Boom! Situpa stepped out, directly moving towards Qin Wentian. His aura towered up into the heavens, incomparably tyrannical. Punching out, it was as though he wanted to shatter the void. The terrifying might of his fist blasted towards Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian waved his palms as the dragon imprint blasted out, causing a terrifying explosive sound to echo out in the air. Situpa soared through the air, ignoring the chaotic flow of chi as he pointed his finger forward. Streams of sword light tore through everything as a terrifying rain of swords appeared in the air. The divine energy in Qin Wentian's Yuanfu seethed as he blasted out with his palms. Countless shadows of great rocks appeared in the air, their shrill cries echoing throughout the heavens and earth. Situpa's palms appeared from within the shadows of the great rocks, causing Qin Wentian's body to freeze. His entire body was actually hardening, becoming incomparably rigid. Explode! Qin Wentian's countenance drastically changed. The divine energy in his body erupted forth with a frenzy as his demonic chi tore apart the protective barrier of light enveloping him. However, Situpa's silhouette had already descended. What sort of character was he? Why would he waste an instant? Although in his eyes, Qin Wentian wasn't even worthy to be called an opponent, since the battle had already begun, he would definitely suppress Qin Wentian. Bzzz. A hail of arrows exploded forth. Situpa waved his hands as sword chi gushed forth, shattering the arrows. At the same time, his left hand slashed out as a beam of sword light slashed downwards, aiming for Qin Wentian's body. Not good. Fan Lu and the rest exclaimed in shock. Qin Wentian's countenance turned extremely pale as his powerful divine energy frenziedly gushed forth. As the sword landed, a piercing sound rang out. Fresh blood splattered out from Qin Wentian's chest, dyeing his robes red as his flesh was lacerated. He's trying to kill me. Ouyang Guangsheng's countenance abruptly changed as he soared up into the skies. However, at this very moment, the experts of the Mystic Maiden Palace all acted. Li Shiyu's palm energy enveloped Ouyang Guangsheng, while the others attacked Fan Lu and Chu Mang. In the air, Qin Wentian's silhouette explosively retreated. His Garuda wings flapped madly as he stared fixedly at Situpa. This is the unmatched realm. Qin Wentian's voice was as cold as ice. I should have enough time to kill you. Situpa's voice was serene as he stepped out once more. In that instant, the killing intent emanating from him surged forth, enveloping Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian had tarnished the reputation of the Sword Extinction sect and humiliated Yu Bingying. Although Qin Wentian's talent was unparalleled, in Situpa's eyes, he was nothing more than an ant. He had never cared about Qin Wentian. But today, Qin Wentian had offended his dignity. In that case, Qin Wentian should die. The will of the mandate of swords at the perfection boundary erupted forth. Situpa grabbed out in the air, causing Qin Wentian's body to stiffen once more. Situpa seemed to be protecting him, but at the same time, he was also restricting his movements. At the same time, Lin Haotian and the others from the Peerless Sword sect soared into the skies, blocking Qin Wentian's path of retreat. They would definitely follow Situpa. If Situpa wanted to kill Qin Wentian, he would have to kill him before anyone else arrived. After that, they would leave the unmatched realm. The unmatched realm was the unmatched realm of the Azure Continent. Unparalleled in the Azure Continent, they didn't care about the mortal world. The hearts of the spectators trembled violently. Situpa was going for the kill. As expected of a Heaven's Chosen, Situpa wanted to kill a genius. Chapter 326. How powerful was Situpo's killing intent? Qin Wentian, who was at the 6th level of Yuanfu, was completely suppressed by him, who was at the 8th level of Yuanfu. Similarly, as a genius from the Sword Extinction sect, how could the innate techniques and cultivation arts he cultivated be weak? His astral souls were also extremely powerful as well. His third astral soul was an astral soul from the 5th heavenly layer, causing the astral energy in his body to be terrifying to the extreme. Qin Wentian's mandate of Stone Source was at the perfection boundary. Qin Wentian's advantage was the fact that he had 3 Yuanfus in his body, and the fiend transformation art allowed him to possess the physique of a demonic beast, allowing him to transform into a demonic beast. Not only that, what made Qin Wentian extremely depressed was the fact that ever since he met with danger in the refinement grounds of divine inscriptions, his second bloodline had grown even stronger than his first bloodline. However, he still hadn't fully awakened his bloodline yet. That mysterious bloodline was akin to an ancient treasure chest, he could only slowly excavate the energy within. As for divine inscriptions, that was also his greatest advantage. However, the divine inscriptions he could instantaneously unleash weren't enough to threaten his opponent. Bzzz. A resplendent astral soul erupted forth. Qin Wentian didn't conceal his third astral soul, an astral soul originating from the 5th heavenly layer. That resplendent golden light, that incomparably tyrannical ancient demon astral soul, exuded a tyrannical aura. The demonic qi exuding from Qin Wentian grew even stronger under the augmentation of his astral soul. An astral soul from the 5th heavenly layer? That's right, Qin Wentian never released his astral soul before. This is the first time an astral soul originated from the 5th heavenly layer. Not only is that an astral soul from the 5th heavenly layer, it's also a demon sovereign astral soul, ranked number 1 in the War Beast Index. Those below felt their hearts trembling. Situpo and Qin Wentian, these 2 demon-level geniuses who had obtained the authority of the 36 cultivators, were both in a frenzy. Situpo wanted to kill Qin Wentian, and Qin Wentian could no longer conceal his strength. He erupted forth with all his might, revealing his demon sovereign astral soul. His third astral soul was already able to condense the demon sovereign astral soul, which was ranked number 1 in the War Beast Index. In that case, there was no doubt that his fourth astral soul would originate from the 6th heavenly layer. At that time, the strength of his astral energy would be extremely terrifying. His body, at this moment, the crowd seemed to have seen an unbelievable scene. They saw Qin Wentian's demonic aura billowing into the sky. That demonic aura enveloped Qin Wentian's body at an extremely fast speed. In an extremely short instant, Qin Wentian's body transformed into a terrifying demonic body. This. The hearts of the crowd pounded. Was Qin Wentian really a demonic human? At this moment, that demonic body had the wings of a Garuda, the scales of a Xuanwu, the arms of a Kirin, and the claws of a golden dragon. Only his body was still in human form, and his head was still the same as before. The current Qin Wentian was extremely terrifying, giving off an intense visual impact to the eyes of the crowd. The second level of the Fiend transformation art, the Fiend Advent art. Using the powerful yuan energy of demonic beasts to support one's body, one could condense the body of a demonic sovereign. That's definitely not a demonic human's body. How could there be such a terrifying combination? The wings of a Garuda for speed, the scales of a Xuanwu for defense, and the arms of a Kirin and the claws of a golden dragon for offense. What a freakish combination. No wonder Qin Wentian's demonic aura is so monstrous. He must have cultivated a demonic art that allowed him to condense the energy of ancient demonic beasts into a human body. Someone exclaimed in shock. If they could cultivate such a cultivation art, their strength would undoubtedly rise to a whole new level. This could be seen from the fact that Qin Wentian was able to completely ignore the attacks from the Sword Extinction sect. The eyes of the spectators gleamed with sharpness. Even Situpo and the rest froze for a moment as they stared at the transformations occurring to Qin Wentian. A terrifying bloodline surged within Qin Wentian's body, as a blood-colored light flowed around his body, adding to his terrifying demonic aura. Qin Wendian was akin to a true demon king from the primordial times, looking down on the heavens and earth, the lord of demons. Even if you are a true demon king, you still have to die. As the sound of Situ Po's voice faded, he clenched his fists, attempting to harden Qin Wendian's body. However, Qin Wendian simply stood there, his countenance as cold as ice. The will of the mandate of demons erupted forth, and with a clench of his golden dragon claw, an incomparably fearsome might surged forth. Situ Po remained unfazed, continuing to walk forward. Stretching out his palm, a small, resplendent sword appeared on his fingertips. Boundless sword chi swirled around the small sword, and that unassuming little sword seemed to have transformed into a black hole, devouring the cyclic sword might. The humming sound it emitted caused those who heard it to feel as though they were about to be torn apart by the cyclic sword might. No matter how strong Qin Wendian's physique was, he would break through it. Since Qin Wendian wanted to clash head-on with him, how could he have the slightest bit of fear? No matter how Qin Wendian fought, he would die without a doubt. As the two of them clashed, Situ Po stabbed out with his finger, aiming for Qin Wendian's head. However, Qin Wendian merely grabbed out with his left hand, as a massive amount of divine energy erupted forth. At the same time, Situ Po shifted his body to the side, but what sort of character was Situ Po? His finger slashed out, and instantly, a blood-colored light flashed. His finger continued forward, piercing towards Qin Wendian's heart. At the same time, a resplendent armor appeared on Situ Po's body. This was the astral protection armor, formed from the mandate of stonework at the perfection boundary. Qin Wendian stabbed out with his golden dragon claw, as a terrifying finger strike landed on the astral protection armor. Boundless sword-type divine energy erupted forth, transforming into a terrifying vortex that pierced through the armor. Peng! The moment the two of them collided, they separated again. Qin Wendian's demonic body felt as though it was being torn apart, his internal organs felt as though they were about to be torn apart. Fresh blood flowed out of his mouth, as well as from the corners of his lips. The explosive power contained within that finger strike of Situ Po was simply too terrifying, as though it wanted to destroy Qin Wendian's body. Cough, cough. Fresh blood seeped out from the corners of his mouth. Just a single strike had already heavily injured Qin Wendian. However, what was even more shocking was that Situ Po was also injured. He lowered his head and stared at his chest, only to see that the astral protection armor had been shattered. Fresh blood flowed out from the wound, and his body was similarly filled with a destructive might, causing his countenance to turn pale white. Fresh blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. How similar, how intense was that collision? Qin Wendian actually didn't die. Not only that, he even injured Situ Po. Situ Po's astral protection armor was condensed from the will of a mandate at the perfection boundary. It was equivalent to an attack from a cultivator at the 9th level of Yuanfu, yet it was broken by Qin Wendian. This meant that Qin Wendian's attack power had already reached the 9th level of Yuanfu. Boom! Situ Po stepped out once more, as though he couldn't care less about his injuries. To him, he was actually injured. To him, this was a humiliation. Only by using Qin Wendian's life could he wash away this humiliation. Qin Wendian's silhouette flickered, the Garuda feather was as quick as lightning as he retreated. Lin Haotian and the others rushed over to intercept him, yet they didn't dare to get too close. Qin Wendian glanced at them, as though a third eye had appeared in his eyes. Instantly, the three of them trembled in fear. Qin Wendian continuously waved his palms, killing 2 cultivators at the 6th level of Yuanfu. At the same time, he dashed towards Lin Haotian. Lin Haotian explosively retreated, yet Qin Wendian's speed was incomparably fast. The mandate of demons in the mandate of demons not only boosted his strength, it also boosted his speed and explosive power. In addition to the Garuda feather, Qin Wendian instantly appeared in front of Lin Haotian. His palms grabbed out, directly blocking the descending sword of Lin Haotian. The sharp claws of a golden dragon slashed out, and as the sound of bones cracking rang out, Lin Haotian's head was smashed into smithereens. Qin Wendian flung his body through the air. Lin Haotian was also a genius of the Sword Extinction sect, yet he was insta-killed by Qin Wendian with a single strike. Such a scene was sufficient to cause the hearts of the spectators to tremble. Even Yu Bingying was trembling involuntarily. How could Qin Wendian be so terrifying? Not only that, he was so decisive and ruthless. Boom! Situ Po's killing intent towered up to the heavens as his sword might soared upwards, wanting to tear apart the heavens. He wanted to kill Qin Wendian, yet 3 of his fellow disciples actually died in Qin Wendian's hands. Situ Po's silhouette was akin to a sword, moving like a beam of light, chasing after Qin Wendian. A cold light flashed as a sword slashed apart the heavens. Qin Wendian abruptly turned and blasted out with a dragon imprint, causing the heavens and earth to rumble. It was as though a demonic dragon was roaring, transforming into an ancient imprint. Die! Situ Po's silhouette descended, slamming down with his palm. His strength was akin to a mountain descending from the heavens, exploding towards Qin Wendian. Qin Wendian's countenance flickered with a terrifying coldness. Both his palms blasted outwards as the divine energy in his body frenziedly erupted, breaking apart the mountain as he rushed towards Situ Po. That mountain-like boulder was like a sword, unceasingly slamming towards Qin Wendian. Qin Wendian's body was on the verge of breaking apart. Situ Po saw Qin Wendian rushing towards him. His killing intent was so strong that it could kill. His 9 heavens sword slashed apart the heavens and earth. The divine energy in Qin Wendian's body frenziedly erupted forth as numerous third-rank divine inscriptions manifested in front of him, transforming into a fearsome ancient shield. At the same time, Qin Wendian slammed out with his palms, the divine energy in his Yuan Fu seemed to be on the verge of being sucked dry. The armor on Situ Po's body was still the same as before, but he similarly pushed out with his palms, crushing the space apart. Rumbling sounds echoed out as Qin Wendian's body was once again flung through the air, coughing out fresh blood. His demonic body unceasingly broke apart, yet his eyes were still as cold as ever. If I want you to die, how can you live? Situ Po's killing intent soared to the heavens as Qin Wendian unleashed it. His body was also covered in bloodstains. Nobody had imagined that this battle would be so intense. They all thought that Situ Po would be able to insta-kill Qin Wendian. Evidently, they had underestimated this crazy fellow. Enough! A voice filled with rage rang out, yet Situ Po continued advancing, not willing to let Qin Wendian go. A terrifying gust of cold wind gusted up, and with a thunderous boom, Situ Po's body was flung through the air, unable to advance any further. He knew that although the duration of his battle with Qin Wendian was short, it was more than enough for the experts from the unmatched realm to arrive. You want to battle so badly? A cold voice drifted out, echoing in the minds of Situ Po and Qin Wendian, as though it had appeared out of thin air. I will definitely kill him, even if we are outside of the unmatched realm. Situ Po coldly stated. Qin Wendian didn't reply, yet the look in his eyes had already given him the answer. From today onwards, Situ Po would be his mortal enemy, either you die or I live. Fine, since you guys want to battle, this old man shall give you a chance. That cold voice drifted over once more. 3 days later, at the Heavenly Steel platform, I shall borrow the Heavenly Steel for a while. The 2 of you shall attempt the Heavenly Steel steps, and the loser shall be banished from the unmatched realm, never to enter again for the rest of his life. Also, the disciples of the unmatched realm may attempt the Heavenly Steel steps on that day. I will pave the way for you all to enter the ancient capital of Grand Xia. That voice shook the heavens and earth, causing the hearts of the crowd to tremble. The unmatched realm old man actually wanted to borrow the Heavenly Steel steps. What kind of face did he have? Not only that, he wanted to pave the way for them. However, they also knew that the Heavenly Steel steps were extremely dangerous. If they were not careful, their lives would be in danger. This matter would definitely shake the entire Azure continent. Chapter 327. The heavenly steel platform was located in the central region of the Azure continent. But even so, there was no one there at all. There was only an old man sweeping the steps of the heavenly steel steps. Such a wondrous place had never been occupied by anyone, and no one had ever dared to wipe it off the face of the Azure continent. This was because it was rumored that the owner of the heavenly steel platform was an extremely powerful individual. Not only that, the heavenly steel in the heavenly steel viewing hall was a supreme treasure. It was able to peer into the innate talent and destiny of those who cultivated the heavenly steel viewing hall. It was extremely beneficial to those who cultivated the heavenly steel viewing hall. Every time the heavenly steel viewing hall descended, countless people would head there to challenge the heavenly steel steps. Not only that, there were no rules to the descent of the heavenly steel platform. It was rumored that it depended on the mood of the owner. But now, an elder from the unmatched realm said that 3 days later, he would borrow the heavenly steel for them to challenge, to pave the way for them. The old man naturally knew that among the many geniuses of the unmatched realm, there would be many who would head to the Ginkgo continent at the end of the year. The mysterious old man actually had a friendly relationship with the mysterious and powerful heavenly steel platform's owner, allowing him to borrow the heavenly steel steps for the sake of the cultivators of the unmatched realm. At the same time, it was also for the sake of the battle between Qin Wendian and Situ Pa. The loser would be expelled from the unmatched realm. This was a battle that neither of them could afford to lose. If Situ Pa were to lose, where would his face go? He was 2 levels higher than Qin Wendian, yet he failed to kill Qin Wendian today. On the contrary, Lin Haotian and the rest who participated in the hunt for Qin Wendian had all died. This was already a huge loss of face for him. If Qin Wendian was defeated, he would die. Situ Pa would never spare him. Senior, he killed someone in the unmatched realm. Yu Bingying spoke, wanting to pursue the matter of Qin Wendian. Do you think I'm blind? That ethereal voice drifted over once more, containing a hint of coldness within. Yu Bingying's countenance stiffened. So what if she was a princess of the Azure Emperor Palace? In the unmatched realm, the old man didn't need to give her any face. Among the cultivators in the unmatched realm, how many of them were from prestigious sects? All of them had something to ask of the unmatched old man. The peerless old man was clearly aware of their struggle. Situ Pa wanted to kill Qin Wendian, and Lin Haotian and the others had helped to stop him, only to die at the hands of Qin Wendian. Who was in the right and who was in the wrong? If they were to be convicted, they were all guilty. The matters of today shall end here. If you all want to fight, go to the heavenly steel platform and let the people of the Azure continent witness it. Let's see if you all have the face to lose. As the sound of his voice faded, old man Wu Shuang's aura vanished into nothingness. Situ Pa's expression was ice cold, his gaze sweeping over Qin Wendian, the killing intent in his eyes intensified. 3 days later, I'll be waiting for you at the heavenly steel platform. Situ Pa coldly stated. After which, his silhouette flickered as he appeared in front of Yu Bingying. The two of them held hands as they left the unmatched realm. 3 days later, they would kill Qin Wendian. Qin Wendian retracted his demonic qi, as well as his astral souls. The tyrannical aura he was exuding gradually dissipated into nothingness. Evidently, he was heavily injured. In terms of talent, he was stronger than Situ Pa. But in terms of combat prowess, he was weaker than Situ Pa. After all, there was a disparity between the two of them in terms of cultivation level and mandates. For cultivators, even the slightest disparity was akin to a chasm. If it weren't for the fact that he had many trump cards up his sleeves, as well as his talent, he would have long since died in Situ Pa's hands. Landing on the ground, Qin Wendian once again turned his gaze onto Li Shiyu and the others from the Mystic Maiden Palace. Li Shiyu coldly snorted as she glanced at Fan Lu. After which, she turned to Xian Xian and stated, Xian Xian, Situ Pa will definitely win 3 days from now. At that time, Qin Wendian will die for sure. Fan Lu is a friend of Qin Wendian, and Qin Wendian killed Lin Haotian and the rest. Although Situpa didn't say anything today, he will definitely not spare Qin Wentian. Sister Shiyu, Qin Wentian is only at the 6th level of Yuanfu, while Situpa is at the 8th level. Being able to fight to such an extent, the difference in talent between the two of them can be seen with a single glance. The heavenly steel steps doesn't depend on one's combat prowess, but rather, one's talent, one's will, and one's conviction. Who said that he would lose to Situpa? Li Shiyu coldly snorted. Situpa was too careless today, and he didn't manage to kill Qin Wentian. If not, do you think he would still be alive? Xian Xian, don't be so optimistic. Even if his talent is high, Fan Lu is not him. How can Fan Lu be worthy of you? Fan Lu was incomparably depressed when he heard this. He then spoke, beautiful maiden, do you want to spar with me? Senior said that the heavenly steel platform is open to all of us from the unmatched realm. How about we go there and give it a try? You? Li Shiyu disdainfully replied, if you lose, will you voluntarily leave Xian Xen? She also wanted to go to the heavenly steel platform. How could she miss out on such a good opportunity? Isn't this unfair to me? Even if I win, you won't be able to make decisions for Xian Xian. Fan Li's eyes flickered as he meekly stated, how about this, if I win, you can be my concubine. You. Xian Xian's eyes widened as she stared at Fan Lu, resembling a beautiful tigress. I'm just joking. Fan Li's smile trembled. How can such a woman be worthy of a handsome genius like me? Just you wait. Li Shiyu coldly glanced at Fan Lu. With a wave of her sleeves, she led the people from the Mystic Maiden Palace away. The matter regarding the heavenly steel platform naturally had to be reported to the Mystic Maiden Palace, as well as the matter regarding Xian Xian. Seeing Li Shiyu and the others leaving, Xian Xian's beautiful eyes flashed with a hint of worry. However, she only saw Fan Lu holding onto her dainty hands as he spoke, don't worry, this genius will definitely shock the people from the Mystic Maiden Palace 3 days later, and after that, they will acknowledge me as their son-in-law. Seeing that Fan Lu didn't forget to boast, Xian Xian couldn't help but laugh. Although this damnable fatty was a little shameless, being together with him truly made her happy. She was even happier than when she was with the Mystic Maiden Palace. He would always think of all sorts of ways to make her happy. This kind of feeling was very beautiful, very sweet. Boss, are you alright? Fan Lu and the rest turned their gazes onto Qin Wentian. I'm fine, my body can take it. Qin Wentian laughed. The blood in his body was still churning, recovering from his injuries. A smile could be seen on his face, and no one would be able to tell that he was the one who had fought earlier. Indeed, I can take it. You are too monstrous. If I fought against Situpa, I'm afraid I would be insta-killed. Ouyang Guangsheng couldn't help but to admire Qin Wentian. Despite being at the 6th level of Yuanfu, he was able to fight against Situpa to such an extent. The number 1 astral soul in the War Beast Index, as well as the demonic transformation art. This fellow was simply too powerful. However, you have to be careful. With just that cultivation technique of yours, I'm afraid it's even stronger than some of the overlord powers in the demon continent. It's very difficult for others to not covet it. You have to understand that the cultivation technique you're cultivating in is very likely something that they've bitterly searched for but could not obtain. Ouyang Guangsheng reminded. Qin Wentian nodded his head lightly. Back then when he was cultivating the fiend transformation art, the Azure Emperor had left a message for him. But today, when facing against the tyrannical Situpa, he had no choice but to unleash his full strength. As for the future, he could only be more cautious and try to raise his strength as fast as possible. After the ranking battle, if he stepped into the peak of Yuanfu, it would be best if he could enter closed-door seclusion to break through to Heavenly Dipper. Although the competition between the geniuses of Yuanfu seemed impressive, in reality, they had yet to come into contact with the truly powerful characters. They were only Yuanfu cultivators, and many Heavenly Dipper sovereigns didn't even bother to look at Yuanfu. Only by stepping into Heavenly Dipper would they be able to truly step onto the ladder of power. What's going on with the Heavenly Steel platform? Qin Wentian inquired. The Heavenly Steel is an ancient will that manifests illusions, allowing one's talent to undergo a transformation. In any case, the Heavenly Steel can reap the lives of others, but it can also allow one's strength to rise to a higher level. It's an extremely rare treasure that is rarely open to the public. Now that old man Qin Wentian is able to borrow the Heavenly Steel, it's undoubtedly a great opportunity for us. Ouyang Guangxing's voice was filled with anticipation. This time around, the battle between Situ Pe and Qin Wentian wasn't a bad thing. It gave everyone a chance. For the next 3 days, the geniuses of the Unmatched Realm all left the Unmatched Realm, informing their respective clans or sects as they headed towards the Heavenly Steel platform. This piece of news also spread out at a terrifying speed towards the Azure continent. Only now did the major powers of the Azure continent hear of a new name, Qin Wentian. In the Unmatched Realm, there was actually a young man at the 6th level of Yuanfu who wasn't even 20 years of age who fought against Situ Pe from the Sword Extinction sect, killing Lin Haotian and the rest. This news caused many of the juniors of the Sword Extinction sect to feel a sense of loss of face. As for the elders of the sect, they didn't pay much attention to it. Every demon-level genius had to go through many rounds of selection, and since Lin Haotian died in the hands of someone with a lower cultivation base than him, it was impossible for the elders of the sect to seek revenge. Killing Qin Wentian would be left to Situ Pe. And the Heavenly Steel platform attracted the attention of countless people in the Azure continent. For the sake of safety, Ouyang Guangxing first mobilized some experts from the Ouyang aristocrat clan, in case there were any hidden dangers. Who knew if someone would ambush and kill Qin Wentian before the battle started? Hence, he had to be more cautious. Today, the number of experts in the Heavenly Steel platform was as many as the clouds. Many of the major powers of the Azure continent had sent their disciples to cultivate in the Unmatched Realm. Today, they all had a chance to ascend the Heavenly Steel steps. In the vast area, experts from all over the Azure continent gathered. Their gazes stared ahead as they inclined their heads. At the end of the flight of stairs, there were 3 gigantic stone monuments, simple and unadorned, exuding an ancient aura, yet extremely clean. Below the stone monuments, an old man clad in tattered robes was quietly sweeping the dust off the steps. It was as though he had been repeating this action for an eternity, as though he didn't know fatigue. Boom! From afar, at the top of the Heavenly Steel platform, the sound of a bell reverberated through the air. After which, streams of astral light cascaded onto the Heavenly Steel. Instantly, the color of the sky changed as resplendent astral light descended, landing on the ancient stone monuments. In an instant, a mysterious intent enveloped the entire space. The astral light descended, the ancient will of the Heavenly Steel. The 3 Heavenly Steel steps shone with resplendent resplendence. Bzzz. A raging wind gusted by as a silhouette appeared at the bottom of the Heavenly Steel steps, staring up at the skies. The wind howled unceasingly as numerous silhouettes descended, causing the eyes of many to gleam with sharpness. The geniuses of the Unmatched Realm were all gathered here. At this moment, a silhouette soared through the air. This was none other than Situ Pe. His gaze swept through the surroundings before landing on a certain location. Over there, Ouyang Guangxing, Qin Wentian, Fan Lu and the rest were all gathered together. In the past 10 years, the 27 steps of the Heavenly Steel steps have been opened 3 times. The highest number of people who managed to reach the 18th step was the 18th. Today, I shall break through this record. Situ Pe slowly spoke, his sharp gaze riveted onto Qin Wentian. Chapter 328. Qin Wentian glanced at Situ Pe before shifting his gaze away, staring at the Heavenly Steel steps in front of him. A mysterious and majestic energy enveloped the entire Heavenly Steel steps, and the light circulating around the Heavenly Steel steps seemed to contain a mysterious intent. This time around, it wasn't only those he met in the Unmatched Realm who were here. In the air ahead, there were also several silhouettes with extraordinary auras, exuding an aura that wasn't any weaker than Situ Po's. Situ Po would definitely become a heaven's chosen of the Sword Extinction sect. However, he was still a step away from challenging the Heavenly Fate rankings. In the Azure continent, those rankers on the Heavenly Fate rankings had all gone to the unmatched realm to cultivate. Recently, they were either in closed-door seclusion, or preparing to break through to Heavenly Dipper, in preparation for the ancient kingdom of Grand Xia. But today, how could they miss out on such an opportunity? In the Ouyang aristocrat clan, other than Ouyang Guangxing's side, there were still two other camps. One of them was the first camp. A young man clad in violet robes stood in the air. Not far away from him, Duan Qingshan and Ouyang Ting stood there. That young man was a heavens chosen from the Ouyang aristocrat clan, Ouyang Zheng. He was ranked number 10 on the latest Heavenly Fate rankings. However, it was rumored that Hua Taixiu and a few others had already stepped into Heavenly Dipper. At the end of this year, after the trip to the ancient kingdom of Grand Xia, the Heavenly Fate rankings would undergo a huge change. This was the usual practice of Grand Xia. Usually, there would only be minor changes, but once every 3 years, the Venerate Heavens sect would remove those who had already stepped into Heavenly Dipper before rearranging the remaining rankers according to their battle records. Hence, many people would only look at the Heavenly Fate rankings once every 3 years. If this was the case, and if there were no more powerful characters appearing later on, Ouyang Zheng might have a chance to enter the top 8. The Ouyang aristocrat clan had 2 heavens chosen in the Yuanfu realm, Ouyang Zheng and Duan Qingshan. Not only that, Ouyang Guangxing had also reserved a spot for himself. Over there, Zhang Lengfeng from the multidirectional Thunder Winds sect has also arrived. The gazes of the crowd shifted onto a young man with a cold expression. This was a heavens chosen from the multidirectional Thunder Winds sect, ranked number 12 on the Heavenly Fate rankings. Other than this, on the side of the Mystic Maiden Palace, Li Shiyu stood beside a beautiful young lady. That young lady glanced in the direction of Qin Wentian, glanced at Qin Wentian, Fan Lu, and the rest before shifting her gaze onto Xian Xian, come here. Xian Yan, ranked number 17 on the Heavenly Fate rankings, a heavens chosen from the Mystic Maiden Palace. Oh. Xian Xian glanced at Fan Lu, before moving towards Xian Yan. You, Shiyu and the rest, follow me to challenge the Heavenly Steel Steps. Xian Yan spoke, yet she didn't mention anything about Fan Lu. Ice Shadow, is that him? In the direction of the Azure Emperor Palace, a figure beside Yu Bingying pointed his finger in the direction of Qin Wentian as he asked. Yu Bingying nodded, her eyes flickering with coldness. If Situpa wins, he will definitely kill this brat. But if Situpa fails, there's still me. That person spoke. He was none other than a heavens chosen from the Azure Emperor Palace, Yu Bufan. Yu Bufan didn't conceal his voice at all. In the surroundings, the gazes of the crowd all landed on Qin Wentian. This brat, is he the rumored young man Qin Wentian who turned the entire unmatched realm upside down? It's rumored that he obtained the privilege to cultivate in the 36 mountains, the same as Situ Pa. Not only that, he even killed Lin Haotian and the other experts from the Sword Extinction sect. Situ Po's Sword of Extinction actually failed to take his life. His third astral soul is said to be the Demon Sovereign Astral Soul, ranked number 1 in the Warbeast Index. Such an astral soul is even more superior compared to the heavens chosen in the Azure continent. As for the fatty beside him, his name is Fan Lu. He's proficient in archery and was accepted as a disciple by the Unmatched Realm's Arrow Emperor. The Arrow Emperor is one of the top experts in archery in the entire Grand Xia Empire, killing enemies from 1,000 miles away. This fatty's looks are truly unremarkable, yet the little princess of the Mystic Maiden Palace actually fell in love with him. How interesting. Xian Xian is still young, in a few more years, there would surely be many heavens chosen pursuing her. I wonder why she fell in love with that fatty. Beneath the heavenly steel, the sunlight cascaded downwards, and experts were as common as the clouds. However, the focus of the crowd was actually a group of young men whom they were initially unfamiliar with in the Azure continent. The reason why the old man from the unmatched realm wanted to borrow the heavenly steel was because of the conflict between Qin Wentian and Situpa, and also because Qin Wentian's friend, Fan Le, was in love with the little princess of the mystic maiden palace. Not only that, Ouyang Guangsheng, who had always had his eyes on the top of his head, was walking together with them. The crowd wanted to see how this group of people would perform on the heavenly steel steps. On top of the heavenly steel steps, the old man with the broom slowly walked to the side as he calmly stated, "Those who wish to ascend the heavenly steel steps, be prepared to bear the consequences." The hearts of many trembled, as many rumors regarding the heavenly steel steps flashed through their minds. The 27 steps could prove one's talent, but it was also a path of no return. In the ancient times, there were many geniuses who failed to climb the heavenly steel steps, never to rise again. Hence, there was a saying in the Azure continent, unless one's talent was demon level, they wouldn't be able to ascend the heavenly steel steps. Not entering was better than entering. However, at this moment, the people who had just arrived were all cultivators of the unmatched realm. Even if they didn't care about the attention of the crowd, they still wanted to test their own talent. All of them were extremely excited as they stepped out, moving towards the bottom of the heavenly steel steps. Situpa, Qin Wentian, Ouyang Zheng, Zhang Lengfeng, Xian Yan, Yu Bufan, Duan Qingshan, Ouyang Guangsheng, Fan Lu, Xian Xian, and the others were naturally the most eye-catching. Other than them, there were also some other rankers on the Heavenly Fate rankings who had arrived. In the past 10 years, the heavenly steel steps had opened a total of 3 times, but the highest one had reached was only the 18th step. Today, would there be anyone who would be able to break through? Situpa didn't even spare a glance at Qin Wentian. He stepped forth and was the first to ascend the heavenly steel steps. At the first step, he halted as he carefully sensed the ancient will of the heavenly steel steps. If one didn't ascend the heavenly steel steps, no one would know what Situpa had encountered. Fan Lu. At this moment, a voice drifted over. Fan Lu turned his gaze over, only to see Xian Yan. Beside her, were Lu Shi, who had once been tortured by Qin Wentian, Wang Zhao's girlfriend, Qiao Xian, Li Shiyu and Xian Xian. These people were all geniuses that were qualified to enter the unmatched realm. The maidens of the mystic maiden palace stood together, a sight that was extremely pleasing to the eye. "If you can't ascend as high as me today, you better leave Xian Xian alone." Xian Yan coldly spoke as she stepped forth, similarly ascending the heavenly steel steps. Ouyang Zheng and Zhang Lengfen glanced at each other, their gazes filled with hostility as they stepped forth together. Yu Bufan and Yu Bingying stood together. They coldly glanced at Qin Wentian before stepping forth as well. Duan Qingshan and Ouyang Ting stood together. Duan Qingshan encouraged Ouyang Ting, "Ting since you can enter the unmatched realm, you can also ascend the heavenly steel steps." Ouyang Ting heavily nodded her head. She, the unruly young miss of the Ouyang aristocrat clan, could feel a sense of immense pressure when she ascended the heavenly steel steps together with the other geniuses of the Yuanfu realm in the Azure continent. Most probably, the powers behind them were all secretly observing their performance. "Ouyang Ting, with your temperament, I advise you not to go up. I'm afraid you won't be able to take the blow." Ouyang Guangsheng stared at Ouyang Ting as he spoke, his words causing the expression in Ouyang Ting's eyes to change. "I'm saying this for your own good. But since you don't want to listen, just pretend I didn't say anything." Ouyang Guangsheng didn't mind. After which, he turned to Qin Wentian and the rest and whispered in a low voice, "Be careful." Qin Wentian and the rest nodded their heads as their auras gushed forth. Inclining their heads, they saw that Situpa had already ascended the 3rd step of the heavenly steel steps. After widening the distance between them, Qin Wentian and the rest finally stepped out, landing heavily on the 1st step, officially stepping onto the heavenly steel steps. Bzzz. A wondrous glow enveloped them, as though they were the only ones left in this world. This feeling was akin to facing the heavenly steel steps alone. In the air, the three heavenly steels enveloped Qin Wentian, as though there was a pair of eyes staring at him. Can your body of flesh and blood withstand the power you're exerting? A voice rang out in Qin Wentian's mind, reverberating unceasingly. Instantly, a terrifying pressure enveloped him, causing him to feel his entire body tightening. If he relaxed even a little, he would be blasted off the heavenly steel steps. Can your body of flesh and blood withstand the power you're exerting? Naturally. Qin Wentian opened his eyes, as a demonic light flickered in them. Demonic qi gushed forth from him as his blood surged. Taking a step forward, he ascended the second step. Rumble. A terrifying force abruptly blasted into Qin Wentian's body, akin to a formless lightning bolt. This strike caused the blood in his body to churn violently as he involuntarily let out a groan of agony. Qin Wentian's steps grew even more resolute, as he firmly nailed himself to the first step. His gaze was incomparably resolute as the energy in his body seethed. This was only the second step, how could it waver his determination? Qin Wentian's eyes gleamed with incomparable sharpness as he stared at the resplendent heavenly steel. Stepping forth, Qin Wentian's feet landed on the third step, causing a thunderous boom to echo out as a raging wind kicked up. Boom! An even more terrifying force blasted into his body, causing him to bend his waist as he involuntarily staggered backwards. His countenance paled, no wonder Ouyang Guangxing was so cautious. What a terrifying flight of stairs. Argh, not far away from him, a scream of agony rang out. Ting Duan Qingshan exclaimed in shock. Turning his head, he saw Ouyang Ting being blasted down the heavenly steel steps. Ouyang Ting was sprawled on the ground, her beautiful countenance was extremely pale as she coughed out fresh blood. The second step, she had only taken the second step and she was blasted down. How could this be? Was this her talent? Her pale eyes stared at the crowd in the surroundings. Numerous pairs of eyes were staring at her. Ouyang Ting only felt ridicule in their gazes. She, the chosen of the Ouyang aristocrat clan, was actually so lowly at this moment. No. Ouyang Ting let out a scream of agony. Many in the crowd sighed in their hearts as they stared at her. This was the cruelty of the heavenly steel steps. She had only taken the second step, but from now on, a heart demon would be born in Ouyang Ting's heart. How could she continue to advance? Her conviction had been crushed. If one wasn't a monster, one wouldn't be able to look at the heaven monument. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.